we go. There we go. Okay, here we go. It's loading. Four. Babel. I cannot live with you. You would be life, and life is over there, behind the shelf. Emily Dickinson. 1. Will shouldered open the emergency room doors. After the darkness, the sunlight felt like an explosion. He gasped air. He made it to the white paramedic van and leaned against it. In one hand he had the thing. It was dark inside, but he hadn't had trouble spotting it. A piece of wood about the size of a book with a piece of yellow paper speared to it. He had left the paper in there. The wood was heavier than it looked, and frigid to the touch, like it wanted to leach the heat from his body. There was a symbol on it that looked like nothing he had seen before, and the more he looked at it, the more something in its gust twisted, and his eyes watered until he looked away. But it did not change him. It was true. He was immune. He headed back to the Valiant. Then he stopped because he couldn't show this thing to Elliot. Elliot had been very clear about that. He glanced around for something to wrap it in. The doors of the paramedic van were open. He peered inside and found a small towel and shook the sand out of it. When he reached the car, Elliot's eyes were closed. Will pulled open the door. Elliot's chest hitched and his eyes peeled open. I did it, Will said. I got the word. Elliot blinked. Right here, he said, raising the towel, but Elliot's eyes squeezed shut. It's okay, I covered it up. It's kind of symbol on a... Elliot's head jerked left and right. I'm not telling you details, I'm describing the general kind of object, said Elliot. I know what happened here. Why everyone died. There was something stuck to the word that... Okay, I'm just saying, if you look at this thing, you won't die. It's not fatal anymore. This didn't seem to make any difference to Elliot. You look terrible. Have you been drinking blue water? He spotted a bottle near Elliot's feet, the lid off. The mat was wet. You haven't. He leaned over Elliot, looking for the other bottles. The smell of the car was very bad. Drink. He twisted the bottle's top and held it to Elliot's lips. Elliot's throat clicked. His Adam's apple bobbed. When water spilled down his chin, Will lowered the bottle and waited until Elliot no longer seemed to be drowning. Then he said, More, and tipped it forward again. Gug, said Elliot. I have an idea. We drive to a hospital with living people in it. Then I use this thing to make them help you, right? I just word them. We tell them to help you, but not tell anyone we're there. Elliot was leaking water again, so he put away the bottle. Good plan? Elliot's head turned left, then right. Oh, Will said. What's your plan then? Because it's pretty obvious to me that you're dying, and we both know I don't have a hope in H against the people who are after us all by myself, even if I do have a magic word, so it's either a hospital or I tried a little amateur surgery on you myself, with whatever I can find lying around. Do you want me to do that? Elliot said nothing. I'm not doing that. I'm getting you to a hospital. He closed the door and jogged around to the driver's seat. Keep drinking the water. He tucked the towel in its hidden package between the seats and turned the key. The engine clicked emptily. He blinked. He'd forgotten about the gas. He glanced at Elliot and saw Elliot looking at him with a complete lack of surprise. Shut up, said Will. He studied the roadway ahead, filled with the bones and rusted metal. I can find gas. I'll be 5 minutes. Can you not die for 5 minutes? Elliot's chin dropped. Don't lie to me. If I have to, I will cut you open, said Elliot. Fine. Will eyed him. But he wouldn't learn anything from Elliot's face that Elliot did not want him to know. Sure, he said, you're fine. He climbed out of the car. He found a dust-coated SUV with keys in the ignition and gas in the tank. This was a much better option than trying to introduce life to the disintegrating piece of crap that was the alien, so he climbed in and steered around the wrecked vehicles. The interior had an odd smell, which he tried not to think about. When he got close enough to Valiant, he put the SUV into neutral and jumped out. Elliot seemed to have deteriorated in the meantime. His skin was papery, his eyes unfocused. Hey, Will said, I found a better car. He pulled open Elliot's door. Throw your arm around me. No. Yes. You. Go. I stay. No, that's not what we're doing. You're coming with me. That's the plan. We're taking you to a hospital. Bad plan, said Elliot. Gets you killed. You have an alternative? North, 2 miles, dirt road, then cross country, 40 miles to Blacktop. Town, Kikaroo, then any way you want. Is there a hospital in Kikaroo? No, so we're not doing that. Must. I tell you what, look me in the eye. Tell me you believe I can do this without you, and I'll leave you here. Elliot eyed him. Unconvincing, Will said. Put your GD arm around me. No. Get the F out of the car. No. Will leaned in to grab him. Elliot's head had pivoted to hit Will in the nose. A small movement, but enough to knock him back, his vision flaring. Mother F! He turned in a circle. You. He lunged across Elliot and grabbed the towel. I'll effing make you. He began to unwrap it. No. The intensity of Elliot's tone stopped him. Then, never. For a moment, Will thought Elliot was climbing out of the car, but he was only leaning. Never. On me. Okay, Will said, intimidated. Point made. Fine. But then Elliot slumped back in his seat, becoming less terrifying and more fragile, and he changed his mind. You know what? I am going to use it. He peeled the towel from the petrified wood. It caught on a sharp protuberance and ripped. A noise came out of Elliot, something halfway between a snarl and a moan, and his head turned away. Will had to twist him back to face the bare wood, then realized Elliot's eyes were closed. Gee, idiot! He tried to thumb up his eyelids while keeping a grip on the word. Open up! He forced open one eye. The pupil dilated and the fight drained from Elliot's body. Okay, now, Will said. Get out of the car. Elliot's hand shot out and gripped the doorframe. Will retreated a step. Elliot's other hand came out and twisted around like a spider until it found purchase. His body began to shake. Are you, okay there? Will said. Herg, said Elliot. His expression was very intense. He was trying to pull himself out of the car, Will realized. Straining, but lacking the strength to do it. Will moved forward to help and realized that Elliot's entire body was vibrating, his muscles tight bundles of wire. There, Will said. Elliot straightened. He threw out a foot in a jerky, searching motion. Will released him. Elliot fell to the pavement. Oh, crap! Sorry! Elliot's hands scrabbled at the concrete. Elliot, let me help you. Gee. He wrapped his arms around Elliot's torso. Come on, this way. After 4 steps, Elliot vomited. His eyes were wide and staring, the pupils milky. He looked dead. Elliot, I'm sorry, but it's just a little farther. Elliot's foot slid out and Will maneuvered it to touch the ground. That's it. Elliot made a noise like it might become a cough one day. Please, Elliot. Elliot was not going to make it. He was already dead and Will was making him walk to an SUV. I'm so sorry, but I can't let you die. Harg, don't die. Do not die. He was still holding the bear word and tried to wave it in Elliot's face. Whether Elliot could even see anymore, Will didn't know. Don't die. Elliot's body convulsed. Flecks of spittle flew from his mouth. F, he said. They were inching towards the paramedic van, and Will wondered if there was a sedative in there, something in a syringe, which he could use to knock Elliot out. Then Elliot would stop being so much like a reanimated corpse. Come with me. He propped Elliot against the rear of the van, and Elliot keeled over. Will climbed inside anyway and began ransacking drawers. The sensation that he had been here before descended again, more strongly this time. He could feel memories scratching the underside of his mind, just out of reach. But he didn't have time for that. Elliot was lying in the dust, and Will had to get him to the SUV. He should use a fireman's carry. Why had he been shuffling around, holding Elliot by the arm? That was stupid. You wanted to move someone, you put them over your shoulders. Everyone knew that. Anyone in emergency services had practiced drills 100 times. He looked around the van. This vehicle wasn't just familiar, it was his. He crawled past the trolley and into the cabin. Dropping into the driver's seat, he put his hands on the wheel. Elliot was bleeding to death back there, but it was calling to him. He had the feeling he was a paramedic. He popped open the compartment between seats and rummaged through the junk inside. Among the loose change in the plastic wrappers was a yellowed newsletter. He glanced at it and almost tossed it aside before realizing the picture on the front was of him. He looked different. Everything was clean and bright. His hair was long, he had a tan, his shoulders were broader, he was relaxed in a way that Will couldn't ever remember feeling. He read the caption and counted the figures from left to right to be sure. Harry Wilson. That was him. His name had been Harry. Behind him, Elliot coughed. Will thought, that guy has seen a lot of blood. He blinked. For some reason, he hadn't attended Elliot's gunshot wound. He was letting him bleed out, apparently. He felt bewildered. Why had he let Elliot go so long? He climbed back through the van and manhandled Elliot into the bed. Elliot groaned. That was a positive sign. Well, it was a sign. He ransacked the shelves for a scalpel, surgical gloves, dressing, and saline, all of which were in their assigned places, rolled Elliot on his side, stuck the scalpel between his teeth, and forced Elliot's knee up and his arm over. He cut away the shirt, and there it was, an exit wound, big as his hand, pink and torn and oozing blood. He was appalled at himself. Timely first aid would have saved this guy's life. All he could do now was compress and close anything that looked like it was fountaining blood. He inserted a finger into Elliot's lower intestine and gently lifted. There was a sucking noise, a glunk, and a small sea of Elliot flowed into the back of his hand, which was bad, about the worst thing he could see because that meant Elliot had holes. To locate the source, he had to force 4 fingers in there, and Elliot made a terrible sound. Will did what he could. It was not much, but maybe enough. He began to dress the wound. As he did, memories burst in his head like popping corn. Tiny, irrelevant things, the look on a girl's face, the smell of earth in the morning, but they were coming, squeezing past whatever barrier had been erected in his head. Something important came to him, and he paused. Elliot breathed. He was unconscious. His face was gray. The problem was too much of Elliot was spread across 2 different vehicles. Elliot was on his shirt and his coat and on the floor in 2 different vehicles. He was about a hair's breadth away from a hypovolemic shock, and there was nothing Will could do about that. He looked out the back of a van at the emergency room. 20 feet from a hospital that was full of blood product, and every pack would be black and hard as stone. He leaned forward. Elliot. He twisted Elliot's ear. This was extremely painful if you did it properly. Elliot, you mother effer, Elliot groaned. Elliot. He put his lips to Elliot's ear. Elliot. Said Elliot. What's your blood type? Elliot opened his eyes. There was a ceiling, tiled, a false ceiling, the kind that had pipes and wiring snaking through it. He didn't know where he was or when. He heard a crack. He tensed. His abdomen hurt. There was a lot of pain in his body. He tried to raise his head, and his vision swam. He saw pale blue walls and a cracked ceiling, a corded phone implanted into one wall. Chairs, a bedside table. A bed, for that matter, in which he was lying. The air smelled of dust. Oh, he thought, I'm in Broken Hill. He explored his surroundings with both hands. Something tugged on his arm, which turned out to be a tube. He was attached to something. He levered himself up his pillow inch by inch and saw a hat stand draped with tubing and 3 bags. One of the bags bulged with clear fluid, one had dark fluid, and one appeared to have contained dark fluid until recently but was now mostly empty. He felt bewildered because he didn't remember any of this. A second crack. This time he identified it as gunshot, a rifle. His thoughts began to order themselves. He had driven to Broken Hill with the outlier, Will. A farmer had shot him. When he'd realized the wound was fatal, he'd told Will to leave him, but Will hadn't wanted to. It had been one of those frustrating situations where Elliot had needed to convince Will of something but couldn't because the guy was an outlier, also stupidly stubborn. Elliot had passed out before this was really resolved. It seemed that in the meantime Will had saved his life. He heard footsteps. He lay still until he was sure they were approaching, then began to feel around for a weapon. As Elliot saw it, there were 2 plausible scenarios. In one, Will had driven away with the bear wound, as Elliot had instructed, and the footsteps belonged to someone from the organization coming to kill him. In the other, they belonged to Will, who had been too cowardly to leave, and instead hung around hoping Elliot would wake up and tell him what to do. Either way, Elliot felt the need to shoot someone. The deadliest object he could see was the hat stand, which could possibly serve as a club. He tugged at the covers to free his legs. He hadn't progressed very far with this when a man appeared in the doorway. The man had a rifle slung over his shoulder, and for a second Elliot didn't recognize him. Lie down, Will said. He crossed the room and peered out the window. Elliot sunk into the pillow, crushed by the weight of his own bitter disappointment. He shouldn't have expected any different. Will had done nothing Elliot had asked of him from the moment they met. Elliot had been foolish to think he would start now just because everything depended on it. He plucked at the blanket. We leave. Now. Will ignored him. He was looking at something outside. Elliot couldn't tell what. "Listen, you F," said Elliot. "Wolf is coming." He tried to say more, but it degenerated into coughing. When he opened his eyes, Will was holding a cup of water. Elliot took it. There was something different about Will's manner. The reason Elliot hadn't recognized Will before, Will was different somehow. Elliot had the odd discombobulating thought, that isn't Will Park. The Will person watched him drink without expression. When Elliot finished, he said, "Lie down. Have to. You're about to pass out again," said the Will person. "Lie down." He felt the truth of this, but fought it anyway. "Wolf. You mean Emily. Emily Ruff." Oh, God, Elliot thought. "Don't think you mentioned that. You talked a lot about Wolf, but you never mentioned that I knew her. Knew her pretty well, as it turns out." "I can explain." "Yeah," said Will. "You'll explain, but first you're going to sleep." He hefted the rifle. "I need to shoot some guys." "What guys?" Elliot tried to say, but unconsciousness got him first. He fell into sleep, but not far. He remembered a phone ringing in the dark. It had been a while ago, but he had been lying down like this, feeling Broken Hill all around him. He had opened his eyes and seen curtains, a bedside clock. Hotel, he'd remembered. "I'm in a bed in a hotel in Sydney." The phone rang and rang, but he hadn't moved in case it dissolved, revealing that he was back on that road, his face in the dirt, lying still. He picked up the phone. "Your wake-up call, Mr. Elliot. It's 4:30. "Thank you." He placed the receiver back on the cradle carefully, and it did not dissolve. He rose and drew back the curtains. Beyond was the city. The famous Sydney Opera House, wreathed in light. Behind that, the hulking steel bridge. A few boats on the bay, lights bobbing. These things were comforting to him, the water, the steel, because they proved it was not 3 weeks ago, when Broken Hill had died around him. He showered and dressed. A newspaper lay outside his hotel room door, and he stepped over it. Downstairs, a limo idled for him, the bellhop already moving to open its door. The city's winding streets slid by, tinted dark, and then the bay as they crossed the bridge and navigated through the zoo. On a narrow road, dark waves lapped at the rocks. The limousine finally drew to a halt beside a set of steep steps, and the driver indicated that Elliot should ascend them. At the top was a colonial house. There was a terracotta plaza, lit by a dozen craftily concealed garden lights, with a small, ornate table and chairs, and on one of these was Yeats. "Before you come any closer," Yeats said, "take a look at the water." He turned to look. The bay was a black mirror. He wasn't sure that he was supposed to notice. He turned back to Yeats. "It's good to see you." Yeats had risen silently while Elliot's back was turned and was now coming at him with a hand outstretched. Elliot took it. As always, Yeats was about as readable as a wooden fence. Within the organization, there was conjecture as to whether he'd had cosmetic surgery to paralyze his face. Elliot tended to think yes, because he knew Yeats had a personal surgeon, but occasionally he saw a contracting procurus or occipito frontalis and doubted himself. "How are you?" "I was briefly paralyzed 3 weeks ago," he said. "Since then I've been fine." Yeats gestured to a seat. "No lingering effects?" "Not since sunrise on the second day." As she instructed. "Fascinating. To be honest, I remain shocked that a poet of your caliber should succumb to it." He sat. "Let's call it what it is. A bare word." "Apparently so." "You'll excuse me," Elliot said, "but I'm feeling somewhat put upon." "How so?" "You sent me to Broken Hill without telling me what I was dealing with. I believe I told you it was high testing." "There's high testing," Elliot said, "and then there's that thing." There was silence. "Yeah, well," said Yeats. "Obviously, its efficacy took us by surprise." A woman appeared and began to generate tea and coffee. Elliot waited. When she left, he said, "Are we going to talk plainly?" Yeats spread his palms. "You arrived in Broken Hill within hours. Clearly you were nearby. Clearly information has been kept from me. I want to know why, because I'm having trouble understanding what I did to deserve less trust than Plath." "What was it like?" "What was it like?" he said, although he knew. "Quick, I imagine, but you must have perceived something, a split second of vanishing awareness, a grasping at a shrinking light. It was like being effed in the brain. I wonder if you can be more specific. You had this thing in D.C. I'm sure you have plenty of data from those poor Fs you put through the labs." "Some. But I wish to hear it from you." He looked out at the black water. "Regular compromise feels like sharing the cockpit. Like there's someone else in there with you, flipping switches behind your back. This gave me no sensation of being able to regain control. None at all. It felt like being worn by something primal." Moments passed. "Well," said Yeats, "for that I apologize. It was not my intention to sacrifice you. Indeed, I selected you precisely because I consider you my most able colleague, and most likely to stop her. As for why I kept my whereabouts from you, I suggest that was insurance against the possibility that Wolf would turn you against me. A selfish decision. But I have no wish to square off against you, Elliot. The very idea terrifies me. He let this pass. In the distance, an animal, unidentifiable, made a very Australian sound. So we have a bear word. The first in 800 years, Yeats said. It's very exciting. Where is it now? Yeats shrugged slightly. Where she left it. Pardon me? We haven't recovered it, Yeats said. It's still in the hospital somewhere, apparently. Apparently? Local authorities have sent in several teams, none of which have made it out. I presume it's the word that's killing them. He took a moment to compose himself. It's surprising to me that you haven't taken all the necessary steps to recover it. I cannot express how surprising that is. Said Yeats. He gazed onto the darkness a while. Let me ask you a question. If the word is so powerful, why did those who wield it fall? For they did fall. The stories are united on that. In every case, the appearance of a bear word is followed by a Babel event in which rulers are overthrown and a common tongue abandoned. In modern times, it would be like losing English. Imagine the sum total of our organization's work gone, our entire lexicon wiped out, and yet apparently this has happened. Apparently it happens following every discovery of a bear word without fail. Is that not curious? All empires fall eventually. But why? It's not for lack of power, in fact, it seems to be the opposite. Their power lulls them into comfort. They become undisciplined. Those who had to earn power are replaced by those who haven't known anything else, who have no comprehension of the need to rise above base desires. Power corrupts, as the saying goes, and the bear word, Eliot, is not only absolute power, but worse, it is unearned. I need do nothing to possess it other than pick it up. This troubles me. I ask myself, if I seize the bear word, do I remain as I am, or does it corrupt me? I have no idea, he said, but I'm pretty certain we can't leave it in the effing desert. Yeats was silent. He leaned forward. Bring it back home, seal it up, sink it in concrete, bury it for another 800 years. Yeats glanced away. We don't need it, Eliot said, unless you have an urge to build a tower. There is another issue. Wolf escaped. He closed his eyes. It was unprofessional, but he needed to do it. How is that possible? She's quite resourceful, Yeats said, as I believe you know. The newspapers said nobody made it out alive. Surely you didn't trust them. Where is she? I have no idea. You have no idea? As I said Yeats. Resourceful. She managed to get someone out too. Who? Presumably the man she went back for. Harry? Yes, that name sounds familiar, so let me get this straight, he said. There's a bare word in Broken Hill. The whereabouts of the poet who used it to kill 3,000 people remain unknown. Am I missing anything? No, said Yeats. I believe that's everything. I feel I must be missing something, he said, since the situation is insane. Yeats was silent. The bear word must be recovered. Wolf must be neutralized. Surely you see that this is indisputable. Yeats tested his teeth. Yes, you are correct, of course. It shall be done. For some reason, Eliot didn't believe him. I'll find Wolf. Actually, you will return to D.C. Your flight is booked. You depart this afternoon. He shook his head. I want to stay. How are you, Eliot? You already asked me. I ask again because this is the second time in our conversation that you have used the word want. Were you a third-year student, I would be appalled. I'll rephrase. It's important to neutralize Wolf, and I'm the best we have. But how are you? Yeats' eyes held this. She has shaken you. I see it plainly. Was it the bear word? No, something else. You are always too close to her. You developed affection. Why, I have no idea, but it clouded your judgment then, and continues to do so now. You feel betrayed. You are infected with the desire to atone for your failure and stop her in Broken Hill. That's how you see what happened? As my failure? Of course not. I speak of how you see it. Yeats gazed across the bay to where soft fingers of sunlight edged over forested hills. A tragedy like this, we all blame ourselves. Do we? Eliot thought. I strongly believe I should stay. That is why you cannot. The sun bloomed along the tree line of the far hill, throwing spears into the bay. Ah, said Yeats. Here we are. Watch. A menagerie of animal voices rose to greet the light, hooting and calling. Where sunlight touched it, the water flared bright blue. It took Eliot a moment to realize that the glittering wasn't a visual effect. The waters were moving. Kingfish, said Yeats. The light draws the plankton draws smaller fish. The minnows draw the kingfish, more precisely, the kingfish are already there, waiting, since they are intelligent enough to perceive patterns and draw inferences. Elliot didn't respond. Yeats sighed. Stay. Search in this country for wolf, if that's what's required to regain control of your conscience. He turned those words over. He couldn't tell whether they were a kindness or a threat, but there was no denying how he felt. Thank you, he said. He sensed light. At first he thought it was the sunlight on the bay. Then he opened his eyes. The light was coming through the windows. Between the windows stood Will with a rifle. The walls were pale hospital blue. He was in Broken Hill. Morning, said Will. What? Said Elliot. Time is it? He began to extract himself from the sheets. You're going to want to stay in that bed. No, definitely not. He got his legs over the side. This caused some flaring in his vision and a looseness in his head, and he took a few moments to sit quietly, eyes closed. When he opened them, Will was pointing the rifle at something outside. Elliot remembered the noise he'd heard before. Crack. What are you doing? Will didn't answer. He was holding that rifle very naturally, Elliot noticed. The barrel followed whatever Will was tracking in a smooth line like an extension of his body, then it jerked. Will stepped back against the wall, pulling back the rifle's bolt and reloading it with a cartridge from his jeans. It's about 6 a.m. Elliot felt disbelief. If that were true, Wolf would be here already. The town would be flooded with proles, or EIPs, or poets, or all three. It couldn't be morning because they were still alive. We have to leave. We're not going anywhere, Elliot. He began, but Will raised the rifle very quickly, and Elliot fell silent. Will's body became completely still. The rifle jerked. Elliot said, Please tell me what you think you're doing. Shooting guys. What guys? Pearls, I guess. You're shooting pearls, Elliot said. I see. When it's a guy in a chopper, and I ask you to shoot him, you won't. But now you're shooting pearls. Will moved from one window to the other. There isn't a limited supply, Elliot said. If you haven't figured that out, she'll send as many as it takes. Who? Emily? Oh, yes, Elliot thought. Will had remembered. That was why he was handling a rifle like he'd used it all his life, because he had. What do you think you're doing, Will? Harry. What? My name is Harry Wilson. Right, Elliot said. Of course, my mistake. What the F are you doing, Harry? Waiting. Waiting for, his mind reeled, for her? Will or Harry or whoever he was didn't answer, but clearly yes. Clearly he had a terrible, ill-informed notion of the situation, which was going to get them both killed. It was Elliot's fault, of course, like everything else. She isn't who you think. Is she Emily Ruff? Yes, Elliot said. Wolf is Emily Ruff, but you understand why I have a problem with that. The whole thing with you wanting to kill her. Are you aware you're acting like a different person? As in a completely different person? I remembered. Okay, Elliot said, but I regret to inform you that what you're remembering is no longer valid because when you changed, so did she. She's no longer the girl you used to hang with in Broken Hill and share milkshakes and ride kangaroos or whatever. Now she kills people. She's coming to kill us. I don't believe you. Why would I lie about this? Charlotte. He searched for the words. You think that's why I hate Wolf? Because of Montana? Harry shrugged. Well, Elliot said, you got me. Since she made me shoot the woman I loved, I've been carrying a grudge. He dragged a hand across his brow. Harry regarded him expressionlessly, and this absurdity, the stillness of the man he knew as well part where Elliot raged, was not lost on him. He'd been a poet once. This is the little fact that Wolf was a murderess who was hunting us both, even before that. You lied to me. What was I supposed to do? You're the only outlier. I didn't have the option of finding one who hadn't slept with her. Well, I get that you're a peed. I do, but look at yourself. The instant you found out that she used to be Emily, you gave up. I'm sorry I lied to you, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to stop Wolf. We have to. What can I say to convince you? I don't want you to say anything. I want you to sit there and wait until she gets here. Elliot sank into the bed. It was pointless, every technique he knew useless because Harry could not be persuaded. What happened to her? When? After Broken Hill. He looked at the ceiling. She disappeared. I searched for months. Then, said Elliot, she came back. Study Probe's Bilingual Puzzle, from the City Examiner, Volume 144, Edition 12. The electrode was applied to the brain of a French-Chinese bilingual, and the patient asked to count to 20. He began in French, but when the electrode was applied to his left anterior frontal gyrus, he involuntarily changed to Chinese. When the stimulation was removed, he had reverted to French. In another case in Dorset last year, a bilingual who suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident was left unable to speak English, although she remained fluent in Dutch. The results provide further evidence that languages develop in discrete parts of the brain, explaining why bilingual speakers tend not to mix up words from different languages. If your brain is a computer, then bilingual speakers dual boot, said Dr. Simone Oakes of Oxford University School of Medicine, referring to a machine with two operating systems installed. They have multiple modes of operation, but only one can be active at a time. Further research is expected to probe the effects of specific languages on the brain, such as the puzzle of why particular attitudes and beliefs appear more commonly in speakers of one language than the other, regardless of cultural factors. 2. She caught the train to Blacktown and wandered the streets until she found the army disposal store she'd read about the previous day. It was big, almost a warehouse, the aisles packed with quasi and wannabe military gear, camo netting hung across the ceiling. She squeezed between bikers and bushies and young men with large, clearly defined chips on large, clearly defined shoulders, occasionally picking up a bottle or a knife or a pack that seemed interesting. In aisle 3, a bearded man in jeans and light t-shirt approached her and offered assistance. Yes, Emily said, I'm looking for a camouflage tarpaulin that can be made into a tent. Desert or bush? Desert, she said. Pleased to have skipped the, oh ho, and what do you need that for? We have tarps and we have camo netting. You can throw one over the other. I want a single product if there is one. You'll be carrying it? Yes, she said, exactly. Then may I recommend a space bag? What's that? A lightweight sleeping bag, foil interior, waterproof canvas exterior. Little mesh part of the face you can open for ventilation without letting in the bugs. Folds up to nothing. Very new, hard to acquire, as they're still in service. How hard? $2,000. She nodded. That she could do. It's camouflage? It's not, but I tell you what, if that's what you desire, I will sew some camo onto it. Yes, she said, that would be terrific. He led her to a counter and processed her deposit. I'll call you in 2 days. Anything else I can help with? He saw her hesitation. If you're planning to spend any time in the desert, I hope you have a water system. Water isn't a problem, but I have a concern about snakes. Rightly so. What can I do to keep them away? The general idea is to keep away from them. I have good boots, but she gestured. Is there some kind of electronic device that scares them, like the ones that keep insects out of your house? The man had begun to look amused, so she guessed no. Anything? He scratched his beard. You can watch where you put your feet. She said. And take a stick, he said. So she was not thrilled with Snake's situation, but otherwise things were coming together. The space bag was the final piece of the puzzle, and with that she could begin testing, which was tempting to skip, but she had uncovered some alarming numbers about sweat-related water loss in the desert, and this wasn't something she wanted to confirm 40 miles from the nearest living human being. Nearest benign human being, that was, since she was working under the assumption that Broken Hill was surrounded by proles, men and women, who worked in bakeries or gas stations or drove trucks, or simply stood at key intersections and would, upon seeing her, become very focused and intent and proceed directly to a phone. Hence the need for a desert crossing. A few months before, when she'd been coming for Harry, she'd done it on a dirt bike. In retrospect, it seemed wildly risky, but she'd been impatient. She had hurried for him. As it had ended so badly, she didn't want to think about that. This time there would be caution. There would be 30 miles of desert traversed by foot, and no one would see her coming because she was doing was unimaginable. Once she had the word, she would begin the next stage of her journey to D.C. When she got there, she would rip out Yeats's heart, just like he had torn out hers. What happened after that didn't matter. She spent a lot of time on trains reading dictionaries. She wore a hoodie and pulled it down in case of cameras. She could ride all day for $2, and never be in the same spot for more than a few minutes. The last service was around 2, so she had to find a place to sleep. That wasn't hard. She had done that before. Sometimes she nodded off on the train. She tried not to because she feared waking up to poets moving through the carriage no way out, but it was kind of unavoidable. The dictionaries were not very interesting. So when she felt her head drifting toward the glass, the factories or fields passing by outside, she let it happen. The day after she ordered her space blanket, she had drifted awake to find a man sitting opposite watching her. She was half out of her seat, words forming on her lips before she realized he wasn't Elliot. He wasn't anybody. She sank back into her seat. Her head was full of terror. It always was, coming on in dreams. Sorry, said the man. Didn't mean to startle you. That's okay. She was getting her bearings. The man was about 40. Nicely dressed sweater, a good watch. She talked to such people sometimes as a precursor to persuading them to give her money. That's a lot of books. Dictionaries? She nodded. Are you a student? Of life, she said. People like this kind of quippery. It calls them to open up. I just read them for fun. Dictionaries? Yes. That doesn't sound like fun. That sounds awful. Awful used to mean full of all. The same meaning as awesome. I learned that from the dictionary. He blinked. See, she said. Fun. That is actually fascinating. What else? She looked at her notes. She had notes. Cause has changed. The definition used to be to make something happen. Now they've added, especially something bad. They've changed cause? They've noticed a change. Dictionaries record common usage. I thought it was a panel of professors, said the man, at a university somewhere deciding what words mean. She shook her head. So it's bad to cause something now? Yes, and to join causes probably because of semantic leakage. Well, he said, you are the most interesting person I've met all week. Thanks, she said. But she was getting a bad feeling. She was regretting this conversation. My stop is coming up. She packed her dictionaries into her bag. Do you have somewhere else to sleep tonight? She didn't say anything. I'm sorry, that didn't come out right. I mean, are you okay? You don't look okay. I'm okay. I didn't mean to be rude, but I'm sitting close enough to smell you. His expression looked genuine, but she didn't like his eyes. There were a lot of tiny muscles there, and they were not consistent with the rest of his face. Is there any way I can help you? Thanks, but no, she stood up. This is my stop. Mine too. She sat. My mistake. He leaned forward. He did this slowly, like he wanted to get it right. Do you need money? She hesitated because she did need money, but not from this guy. She didn't even want to compromise him. She just needed to get away. Her eye was starting to hurt. Whatever trouble you're in, I can help. I'm a lawyer. I have money. No strings. I see an intelligent young woman who needs a helping hand, that's all. Say no, and I won't bother you anymore. The train stopped. The carriage was almost empty, the platform bare. She waited until she was sure the man wasn't moving, then stood and walked quickly to the doors. She got there in time, hit the button, stepped off, and kept walking. A night breeze stirred her hair. She wanted to look around, but kept her head down in case of cameras. $500, said the man, right behind her. Look at it. She ignored him. Are you stupid? Just take it. Take it. He put a hand on her shoulder. She turned and shoved him. He staggered backward. He really was holding a fistful of cash. Behind him, the train began to pull out. I'm trying to help you. F off, she shouted, and she went after him for some reason, and pushed him again. Leave me alone, he tried to catch her arm, but she was too quick for that. Whatever else he wasn't prepared for someone who fought back. She shoved him again. Leave me alone! His back hit the moving train, and he rebounded a step onto the platform. Her brain was full of violence, and her star was sinking, and another push would send him between the carriages. If she timed it right, she thought, Yeats, Yeats, save it for Yeats. He got around her and ran away. She stood there, breathing. She needed to get out of here. She had to leave before the cops arrived. She made for the exit, her hoodie pulled tight. She couldn't wait for the space bag. She would have to call and have it mailed. She had to take herself out of the cities, away from people, before someone got hurt. A month later, she was trudging across the desert. She had a stick. It was night, because during the day you could see for 20 miles in all directions. She assumed someone would be looking. Also, snakes slept at night. She wore a fur-lined parka and loose shorts. Maybe an odd combination, but the thing was, the nights were cold enough to freeze and exposed sweat. A 28-pound backpack was strapped around her waist and shoulders. She was loving her boots, big, brown, comfortable poop kickers. She made good ground one night and stopped at the first hint of dawn. She found a depression in the dirt beside 3 scrubby trees, a long-dead waterhole, and spread her space bag beneath them. She sat on it a while, cooling, watching the stars retreat and the sky lighten. Her body felt satisfyingly used, not exhausted. She was in good shape. She ate a hard biscuit and crawled beneath the space bag and fell asleep. She woke a few hours later in a furnace. She was swimming in sweat. She peeked out, thinking maybe she'd lost her shade, but no, it was just hot. She wriggled out, keeping flat to the ground to avoid presenting a profile, and unzipped her backpack. She pulled out 4 wooden stakes and used them to suspend the space bag a few feet above the ground. The idea was to remain camouflaged from above while allowing the air to move around her. She stripped naked, crawled under the sheets, sucked water from the drinking tube, and tried to sleep. The second night was harder. Her legs felt suspiciously sore, which they hadn't during her trials. She might have been pushing herself, walking faster than she needed to. She was blowing her water budget, too. She forced herself to slow down, stop for more rests, but then worried that she was falling behind on distance, which would create new water problems. The chances were excellent that she could source fresh water in Broken Hill, in case she had no problem. But she did not want to rely on this, since if she was wrong she would die. She kept walking, her stick ready, in case of night snakes. She made less ground than she wanted and stopped early, feeling dizzy. She drank a lot, even splashing some on her face. She ate more biscuits. She hadn't brought many of those to avoid temptation because digestion increased the body's demand for water. That was starting to seem like a mistake. She crawled under the space bag. Again she was woken by the sun baking the earth and had to convert the bag to a little tent. This time, however, she realized the trees she'd camped beneath were basically leafless, which was a serious problem because no shade. There was no wind, and the underside of the space bag radiated heat. She lay there as long as she could, watching her skin turn mottled pink, then red, and crawled out and curled against the trunk of the tree. It was better, but only a little. She began to seriously wonder if she would die. 2 weeks ago she had decided against bringing the long, white Bedouin robes that would have made it possible to walk in the daytime without passing out, thinking they weren't worth the wait. This decision might kill her. She drank her electrolytes. Every 30 minutes she tipped tiny amounts of water into her hands and wiped them across her face and neck. The water pack grew scarily thin, but it was either drink or expire. In the late afternoon, a light breeze began to shift the sand, and she cried a little despite the fluid loss. Finally, the sun eased toward the earth. Some time after that, she began to feel human. She got to her feet and began to pack her bag and thought about which direction to go. The smart thing was to head back. It would take 2 nights, but she had enough water and would be able to recover and rethink how she was going to do this. But it would mean starting over, and the town was only one more night away. It would probably have water. Even if the tanks had gone bad, there would be bottles. Stores and cafes with darkened refrigerators. She ignored the part of her that asked, "But what if?" and started walking. Her feet became sore, then wet feeling, then numb. She didn't want to blame the boots, but she had a feeling they were letting her down. They were like boys who at first were cool and suave, and then after a couple of weeks she realized were a-holes. Around midnight she began to hallucinate a little, and felt important things like checking her compass. She came across a boulder and sat on it and woke up face first in the sand. Her lips felt like a baked cake. She drank and finished her water. The town rose with the dawn. She walked toward it. She lost her stick somehow. She began to pass houses, places she recognized. She saw the first body and tried not to look, but her eyes wouldn't stay still. It was a woman she knew, Cheryl. She recognized the dress. "I'm here to fix it," she told Cheryl. To say sorry, but she couldn't really believe Cheryl would be pleased by that, or would forgive Emily in any way. She sucked on her water tube and remembered it was empty and turned in at a gate because it was time to search for water. She walked up a path and stopped because on the house's concrete front steps lay a brown snake sunning itself. She stared at it. "F off," she shouted, and stamped her boots, and it wriggled away. She opened up cupboards and passed out in a bedroom and threw up in a toilet. She wasn't sure in which order that happened. She found water and slept. When she awoke, the sun was throwing shadows at 45 degrees, and she had to stare at them a long time to figure out whether it was morning or afternoon. She had slept for a day and a half. She was ravenous. She found and devoured a box of fruit bars. Her brain liked this, and she began to be able to make sense of things. Empty water bottles were everywhere. She sat at the wooden kitchen table and waited for the sun to go down. Then she strapped herself into her pack. A strong wind was blowing, tossing stinking sand at her face. She hiked along the road. She had steeled herself for the bodies and kept her eyes up and her mind focused, but the closer she got, the more the wild, clawing terror grew inside her, waiting to turn her around and steer her out of here. Sand stung her eye and she rubbed at it, but it made no difference. She passed the gas station with its burned cars and trucks. She made herself machinery, legs and feet and purpose. She reached the hospital. She stepped over a snarl of cloth and leather and gleaming bone and pushed open the side door. These were things she did. She walked down the corridor. She didn't recognize anything, but that part of her brain was closed. She reached the double doors for the emergency room and dropped her pack and closed her eyes. Then she went in. The smell was very bad, old but wrong. Her nose began to run. Her boots hit something and she shuffled around it. When anything blocked her path, she carefully stepped over it. Her fingers found the counter. She followed it along to the place where she had left the bear word. It wasn't there. She stood a while, breathing. She followed the counter all the way to the wall, sweeping its surfaces. Her fingers found objects, small things she could identify like a stapler and a nameplate. and larger things she dropped upon ascertaining they were not what she wanted, and did not think about. She reached the wall and began making a low sound, equal parts moan and hum. She circled the counter twice. She made her way back to where the bear word had been and dropped to her hands and knees and began to feel around on the floor. Almost immediately she found cloth and hair, and her hum became a shriek, and she couldn't do it any more. She couldn't grope around to corpses. She got to her feet. The idea crept into her brain. I'm lost. She would never find her way out. She would spend the rest of her life crawling over the bodies of the people she'd let die, searching for an exit she was too afraid to open her eyes and look for. Her breaths came out in hitching shrieks. She'd tripped twice, and then her hands found the doors and she crawled through them. She returned to the house. She could have sought out Harry's, but wasn't up to facing more memories. With four walls around her, she felt safer. She scrubbed her hands in a toilet cistern. She sat on the seat and stared at nothing. She felt numb. The word should have been there. Yeats had probably wanted to put her in exactly this position. He had probably recovered the word months ago in secret. She had been tracked all the way in, and right now they were moving through the streets, corralling her, whispering to each other guttural words. But this did not seem right. She did not understand Yeats well, but in her experience people with power used it. She felt the word was there. She felt that strongly. After a while a thought occurred to her. She rose from the seat. She went back to the hospital and through the corridors to the emergency room doors. She put her back against the wall and withdrew a digital camera, which she had found at the house. She had tested its batteries already, but took a photo of the fire extinguisher just to be sure. Then she closed her eyes and pushed through the doors. She shuffled inside a few steps and raised the camera. Her idea was that this thing really was a word. It was on petrified wood, but the wood wasn't the important part. The important part was the mark. She pressed the shutter button and felt the flash from the inside of her eyelids. She shifted her aim and pressed again. She would accumulate photos. Most of the photos would contain unbearable things, but in one would be the word. People kept coming into this room and turning into killers, ergo the word was somewhere it could be seen. She adjusted her aim, pressed the shutter for another photo. She would keep taking until the camera ran out of room. Then she would download the photos to the computer. She would magnify them 1,000 times and inspect each picture a handful of pixels at a time. It would take forever. She would see awful things, but she would do it. Eventually she would find the edges of something that looked like wood. She would know where, in the image, the bear word was located. She could magnify it 100 times until it was too big to see all at once, and she could copy it. The word was not a thing, it was information. It could be duplicated. She could copy it on a piece at one time, carve it into wood so it would be just the same. Maybe she'd get someone to help, so she'd never hold the thing in her brain. Then she'd have 100 tiny pieces numbered on the back, which she could reassemble. She would have found a way to carry it safely. To keep it always close, she pressed the shutter again. She was thinking maybe a necklace. She came out of the hospital. The air felt incredibly fresh and she gulped at it. She started walking, then running, her pack bouncing on her back. She was clutching the camera. She should stop and seal it in plastic, stash it away safely. But she couldn't stop. She ran through dead streets, and a crow called, and she shrieked back at it, an insane yodel that wouldn't stay quiet. She was supposed to be stealthy. They could be listening. She ran, hiccuping and gibbering, desperate to put distance between her and this place, to reach somewhere she could open her lungs and scream triumph like she wanted. Yeats trotted up the mansion steps and was set upon by butlers. He thought he had lost them at the foot of the stairs, but there were more. One attempted to steer him through the great open double doors, and another began gently inquiring if he required refreshment, and a third wanted to take his coat. All this was conducted in a low-register butler octave, making Yeats feel as if he was moving through a burbling stream. He allowed himself to be decoded. A fourth butler seized the opportunity to step forward and brazenly adjust his bow tie. The butler, who wanted to infuse Yeats with refreshments, positioned himself so that Yeats need only take a step forward for a champagne flute to slide effortlessly into his left hand. But Yeats didn't know this butler, and in no effing universe did he allow strangers to insert fluids into his body. "There's Spanish," said Eliot. He had followed Yeats up the steps and was peering into the house. Butlers navigated around Eliot as if he were a rocky prow in a seething ocean, because he was not wearing a tuxedo. He was in a known suit and a beige coat, which apparently Yeats would need to physically pry from his body if he ever wanted to see Eliot in anything else. There was a code, of course. The organization imposed a ceiling on the quality of dress a poet was permitted to enjoy, commensurate with the poet's level. The point was to address the situation thereby. A newly graduated poet realized there was very little in the world denied to him, and began to get about in outrageous suits and $300 cars, drawing attention, and technically the code applied to Yeats. Technically, his entire ensemble should have cost roughly half the price of his current shoes, but Yeats did not follow the code because he was not a 20-year-old idiot who required protection from temptation. He was intelligent enough to respect the intent of the code without slavishly adhering to its letter. Eliot, however, Eliot in this last century suit, his repulsive department store shoes, his wrinkled coat. The most important thing about Eliot was that he wouldn't break a rule to save his life. "Are you coming in?" Yeats said. "I believe that some of the delegates have brought advisers." "No, I'm not dressed for it," Eliot said, and then realized it wasn't a real invitation. "Then I will see you at the office. Russian's not coming." "That's what I came to tell you." Yeats hesitated. The butler with the champagne flute took the opportunity to slide forward, and Yeats glanced at him, bestowing upon the butler the terrible shame of having drawn notice. The butler fell away, mortified. "What do you mean?" "Russian's doing it via speakerphone." "You must be joking." Eliot shrugged. "It's what his people have said." "Well," Yeats said, he prepared for these meetings carefully. He attempted to consider every eventuality, but a speakerphone? Was Russian that afraid of compromise? Was he not aware that employing a speakerphone would broadcast his fear, screaming his vulnerability to every delegate in this house? It was ridiculous. Eliot was still hanging around, eyeing the swirling gowns and tuxedos inside the room. "Thank you," Yeats said. Eliot nodded and began to trot down the steps. Yeats felt his mood lifting with each step Eliot took, with each increment of distance added between him and those shoes. Butlers began to swarm. Excited by this intention, Yeats shrugged them off and entered the house. Just inside the doors was von Goethe, regaling a glittering circle that included, if Yeats was not mistaken, 1 senator and 2 congressmen. Goethe was German, short and sharp-nosed with dark, slicked black hair. He was wearing gold-rimmed spectacles, which Yeats was sure were decorative. His shoes were fine brown soles. Goethe excused himself from the group and clasped Yeats' hands in both of his. "Guten Tag, mein Freund," said Yeats, which caused Goethe's face to crumple in disgust. "Wie geht es Ihnen?" Sorry, Ihnen? Rather nauseous after that. "I apologize," said Yeats. "I do not have the opportunity to practice my German as often as I would like." "You are forgiven." The exchange was established that Goethe didn't wish to engage Yeats in German, which was sensible, since it was easier to resist the compromise in a learned language than a native one, but cowardly for the same reason. Yeats was happy to roll with it, and in the spirit of the occasion, he wasn't here to compromise anyone. Also, he sincerely doubted Goethe was capable of troubling him in English. "A fine occasion you have arranged, so worthy." "Well," said Yeats. For the first time he took in the stage, the tables draped in white cloth, the tasteful sign by the podium that declared, "A world of literacy. We do what we can." "I was speaking with one of your politicians, and he informed me that your government was investing some hundred of millions of dollars to teach children across Asia to read." "We do what we can. Read English," said Goethe. "Well," he said, "we can hardly expect to teach them German." He clasped the hand of the tall, bronze-skinned woman who had met his eye across the ballroom 20 seconds ago and began to cross it like a torpedo. "Rosalia, what a pleasure." "William," she said, "I swear you age backward." "De Castro," said Goethe, casting an eye over her green gown, which was daring when she stood still and practically scandalous when she moved. De Castro offered her hand, which Goethe kissed. "Yeats and I were just discussing his latest plan to seed the world with English missionaries. Surely you see that a common world language would serve the organization's interests." "Interests, I suppose," said Goethe, "but I weep at the prospect that this language would be English." "It won't be," said De Castro. "It will be Spanish. English plateaued some time ago. It will take more than Yeats' missionaries to reverse that." She looked down her nose at Goethe, who stood a foot shorter. "I suppose these things are more alarming to delegates whose languages are in decline." "Ah, it begins," said Goethe. "The traditional German pile-on. Honestly, I admire your spirit. It cannot be easy to watch your language slip into the footnotes of history." "It is doing no such thing. Although I suppose you must be used to humiliation," said De Castro, "German being the second most popular Germanic language." "Children, please," said Yeats. De Castro turned to him. "Did I hear correctly? Pushkin will be joining us via speakerphone?" "Apparently. I do hope we don't need another Russian delegate. They've been dropping like flies. Alexander was doing so well." "It's the language," said Goethe. "Too many morphemes." inherently vulnerable. He can't expect to save himself with a speakerphone. The idea is preposterous. She used a German word for preposterous. Lächerlich, slightly managing the first syllable, watching Geth as she did. So Yeats presumed that De Castro had dropped a little linguistic depth charge there. The entire meeting would be like this, delegates continually probing each other, seeking weaknesses. It was an inevitable byproduct of the fact that the organization was a loose coalition of independent entities, no delegate outranked by any other. Technically, Yeats was no more important than al-Zawayi of Arabic or Bahratindu Harishchandra of Hindu Urdu. This was something he planned to change. "Let us assume Pushkin has other motives," said Yeats, "and not waste our time together on speculation." "Agreed," said De Castro. "Speaking of which, William, I was hoping you might be able to end some speculation of my own. Have you recovered your bear word?" His phone buzzed against his thigh, which was surprising since everyone who knew that number should have known not to call it. "Sadly, no." "How disappointing," said Castro, and simultaneously, "Bullcrap. William, none of us believed that you would allow a bear word to lie in Broken Hill unmolested for almost a year." "The concept is extraordinary," said Geth. "We can discuss that you are willing to believe in this meeting," Yeats said, "which has yet not begun." De Castro glanced around the room. "There is a reason the other delegates have not approached you yet. I imagine it is the same reason Pushkin is not here at all." Her eyes settled on him. "Do you plan to compromise us?" "How ridiculous," he said. De Castro watched him. Geth said, "There is no denying that you have been making efforts to retrieve it. However, the more time that passes, the more one wonders whether one is witnessing not efforts so much as charades." "I do not have the bear word," Yeats said, "for proof. Please note the obvious fact that if I did, I would be using it to spare myself this conversation." His phone buzzed again. "Excuse me." He turned away, plucked the phone from his pants, glanced at the screen, and repocketed it. He gazed into the distance, digesting the words. "Sighting. 3 plus 1 at 95.65 in 24 POI 665006. The message was automated, sent by a computer whenever a person of interest, a POI, was sniffed out by some of the vast number of surveillance systems to which he had access. Because those systems were less than perfectly reliable, possible sightings became messages only when the computer had accumulated sufficiently many of the sufficient quality to pass a particular confidence level. In this case, they were informing him of 3 sightings in the past 24 hours, plus 1 from earlier, which were 95% likely to be person of interest number 665006, which he knew from memory was Virginia Woolf. He returned to Geth De Castro. "Frankly," said De Castro, as if no time had passed at all, "I see little point sitting down to discuss digital interconnectedness and social media when such an overwhelming issue remains unresolved." "It is resolved," he said. "I honestly don't know what else I can tell you." It struck him as remarkably suspicious that there would be a wolf sighting at this moment, in this meeting. He wondered which delegate was responsible. "You can tell me the current location of Virginia Woolf," said De Castro. "That troubles me also. We looked. We didn't find her. It seems likely she is dead." Geth looked at De Castro. "He claims not to know." "William, I hear things," said De Castro, "from people in your organization, as you no doubt hear things from people in mine, and the most disturbing tale has reached me. In it, Virginia Woolf steals the bear word, and brings it to Broken Hill, not out of some adolescent fit of pique, as you described, but rather at your command, as part of a test at the word's effectiveness. Clearly, given the current population of Broken Hill is now 0, this test was a resounding success, which is alarming in itself, William, for as much as we hold you in the highest regard, we are all undermined by your possession of kind of persuasion against which there is no defense. But the part of this tale that troubles me most is the idea that Virginia Woolf is your agent, is out there somewhere, engaged in some activity that serves your purpose. I cannot imagine what that might be, and that makes me most uncomfortable." Throughout this, Yeats' phone had continued to vibrate. He had developed the uncomfortable suspicion that the coincidence at Woolf's sighting during this meeting might not be due to a delegate. It might be due to Wolf. Confide in us, said Gareth. We are your allies, William. I do not have the word, he said, and Virginia Woolf is dead. Now I am terribly sorry, but I will not be able to attend our meeting after all. Something unavoidable has come up. He took a chopper across town and set down the D.C. office helipad. This occupied 13 minutes. In the meantime, he attempted to coordinate people via his phone. This proved difficult because every few seconds it wanted to tell him about an incoming message, which required a tap to dismiss, and by the time the building was in sight, this was what Yeats was spending the majority of his time doing, tapping to return his phone to a useful state. When a computer server became so busy acknowledging incoming requests that it had no time to respond to them, it was called a denial of service attack, a DOS. Yeats was being DOS'd. He surrendered and put his phone away. Freed from the helicopter, he considered the elevator but opted for the flexibility of stairs. One flight later, he emerged into tastefully muted lighting. His assistant rose from her desk, mouth opening, full of messages. Not now, thank you, Francis, he said, and closed the double doors behind him. The lights brightened in response to his presence. This month, his office was a paean to 18th century feudal Japan, paper dividers, low simple furniture. On the wall behind his desk, a samurai sword hung under lights. Yeats had chosen none of this. It was periodically redecorated in a random style to avoid betraying personal aesthetics. He planted himself behind his desk and tapped the keyboard to wake his screens. His predecessor hadn't used a computer. They had been considered secretarial tools. Hard to imagine now. His displays filled with red boxes, now that the computer's thresholds had triggered. It was vomiting up sightings from days ago, even weeks, made newly plausible by more recent data. A voice print from a hotel in Istanbul, a woman with matching facial characteristics in Vancouver. He inspected the picture, sunglasses, hat, nothing would be bet on. But the computer liked the cheekbones, a taxicab security photo, grainy and desaturated, from a route that corresponded with what the computer was figuring out about Wolf's movements. That was Seattle yesterday. The notification boxes were a moving stream, but Yeats managed to snag one with a recent timestamp. It was from the building's security system. Its confidence level was 99%. Wolf was outside right now. His office had a balcony. He was mildly tempted to go out and peer over the railing to see if he could pick her out, but that would be risky. That was possibly what Wolf wanted him to do. There could be a sniping issue. The fact was, as much as he believed he understood Wolf, she had been missing for a year and he had no idea how she had changed. His phone chimed. He felt rising excitement and waited until it was gone. Yes, I'm so terribly sorry, but there are so many people who wish to speak to you, and they're saying quite alarming things. Is one of those people Frost, the poet responsible for building security? Yeats had spoken to him from the chopper in between phone notifications and asked him to execute certain important, long-planned orders. Specifically, Frost was to fill the lobby with environmentally isolated personnel, men and women with black suits and guns who saw the world through a computer-filtered display and heard nothing but whitelisted words. These had proved insufficient to retrieve the word from Broken Hill. The team sent in had rather spectacularly killed each other, but that meant nothing because he had desperately engineered it. He was fairly confident that they could stop Wolf. No, I haven't heard from Frost. I'll speak to Frost, Yeats said. No one else. He closed the speaker. Red boxes continued to slide down his monitors. He saw the word lobby. He leaned back in his chair. So she'd entered the building. If all was proceeding as he'd instructed. Wolf would currently be on the floor, her hands bound in plastic, electrical tape being spread across her mouth. She would be lifted up and borne to a windowless cell. Then Frost would call. He folded his hands and waited. A new red box slid up his screen. POI, possible sighting Wolf, Virginia, second floor. He looked at this a while, trying to imagine circumstances in which security might have decided to take Wolf up rather than down. He reached for the speaker. By the time he got the handset to his ear, a new notification had arrived. Third floor. Was there a delay on these? A few seconds? It had never mattered before. Francis, would you mind putting the floor into lockdown? Yes, sir. And please attempt to reach Frost. Right away. His screen blinked. The lights went out. Part of the lockdown. Nothing to be concerned about. He waited. His breathing was steady. He felt no emotion. Minutes passed. The lights came on. He pressed for the speaker. "Francis, why is the lockdown lifted?" "I don't know. I'm finding out." Noises in the background, quite loud. He could almost feel its low echoes through the door. "Who else is there?" "It's how can I help you?" A female voice spoke, indistinct. He couldn't identify it. The phone clicked off. He slowly put it down. He had recognized Wolf's natural aptitude for attack very early on. It would have been disappointing if she'd fallen to Frost and the soldiers. He would have missed his chance to test himself. Of course, there was the real possibility that she was about to walk in here and destroy him. That was a concern. These were feelings. He didn't need them. He could prevail or he would not. He steadied his breathing and began to pray. "O God, be with me and guide my hand. Let me transcend this petty flesh and become your holy force." Warmth spread through his body. His relationship with God was his greatest resource. It had allowed him to become who he was. So many promising colleagues had fallen to temptation. They managed their physiological needs, eating and breathing and effing deliberately and on schedule, taking care to remain in control at all times. But their social needs, their basic human desire to love, to belong, and be loved, these were simply suppressed because there was no safe way to indulge them, and yet they were named needs for a reason. The human animal craved intimacy at a biological level, relentlessly, insistent. Yeats had seen many promising careers derailed by surrenders to intimacy. Men who whispered confessions to whores, women whose eyes lingered on children. On such small betrayals were psyches unraveled. He had unraveled several himself. He had struggled in his early years. It seemed vaguely amusing now, infantile, but he remembered the loneliness, the way his body reacted when a woman smiled at him, the surge of desire it evoked to join with her, not merely in a physical sense, but beyond that, to confide and be understood. It had been almost overwhelming. Then he discovered God. It had been terribly alarming. The very idea a poet succumbing to religion. He was shocked at himself, but the feeling was undeniable and grew week by week. He could no longer believe he was alone. He began to see the divine in everything, from the circumvoluted fall of a leaf to the fortuitous arrival of an elevator. Occasionally, when the sterility of his job pressed close, he felt the presence of God like a figure on the room. God was with him. God loved him. It was ridiculous, but there it was. It was a tumor, of course. Oligodendroglioma, a cancerous growth in an area associated with feelings of enlightenment. The feelings it aroused could be reproduced through electrical stimulation. It wasn't fatal, but it would need to be removed, his surgeon had told him, as Yeats looked over the black and white scans, because it would continue to grow. Over time there would be less and less of him, and more of the tumor. His brain was being eaten by God. He left the clinic in fine spirits. He had no intention of removing the tumor. It was the perfect solution to his dilemma. How to feed his body's desire for intimacy. He was delusional, of course. There was no higher presence filling him with love, connecting him to all things. It only felt that way. But that was fine. That was ideal. He would not have trusted a God outside his head. The door opened and a woman stepped through. She was wearing a long white coat that reached the floor. The hem was spattered black, with liquid that might have been mud or dirt or might have been frost. She had white gloves. A necklace, something in it that twisted and hurt to look at. He closed his eyes. He reached into his diaphragm for his strongest voice. "Vartix velcor menik wisik, do not move." There was silence. "Ow," said Wolf, "that kind of hurt." He groped for his desk drawer. "Credit to you, Yeats. I spent a long time preparing for you to say those words, and I still felt them." He got to the door open. His fingers closed on a gun. He raised it and squeezed the trigger. He kept firing until the clip was empty. Then he dropped it to the carpet and listened. Still here. There was a sword on the wall behind him, 300 years old, but it would cut. He had no training. But that might not matter if she came close enough. She might think it was decorative until late. "So I'm here to kill you," she said, just in case there was any doubt. He breathed. He required a few moments to calm himself. "Emily." "Wolf," she said. "Wolf now." Interesting. Had she changed segments? It was possible. She might not have merely improved her defense, but managed to alter her base personality in certain important ways. It could be done with practice, in which case she would be vulnerable to a different set of words. Yes, she would have rejected her previous self in order to distance herself from what she had done in Broken Hill. He needed to figure out what she had become. How did you get here? Walked, mostly. The lobby was supposed to contain a fairly overwhelming number of security personnel. The goggle guys? Yeah, they're screened somehow, right? Filtered against compromise? They're supposed to be. They are, but Frost isn't. Ah, he said. So there were no goggle guys. Nope. Difficult to read a person you couldn't see. The visual cues were so important. But it could be done. He could do it. The important thing was that she was still talking. I gather you feel wronged by me? You could say that. Well, he said, I won't demean us both by pretending to apologize, but may I point out that killing me won't serve your interests? Actually, I disagree with you there. I mean, I thought about it. Come here with the word, make you run the organization for me. That would be interesting. And I can't deny there is a real appeal in turning you into my slave for life, but that's not an option. I have a little problem, you see. I picked it up in Broken Hill when you sent me to deploy that kill order. I kind of looked at it. I caught a reflection. It wasn't enough to compromise me, not completely. It was backward, and not very clear. But I think a piece of it got in there. I call it my star. That's what it feels like, a star in my eye. It's not very nice, Yeats. It wants me to do bad things, but I figured out a way to control it. I just need to concentrate on killing you. When I do that, the star isn't so bad. I don't feel like I need to hurt anyone else. So you see, you dying is kind of a non-negotiable at this point. He was fascinated. This part he had not known. Then what? Excuse me? After you murder me, what then? That's not really any of your concern. I suppose not, he said. Very well, we will save that for later, but there is not going to be a later, Yeats. Not for you. He said. He had narrowed her down to a dozen or so segments. He was mildly tempted to run through words for them all, which he could do in about 15 seconds. That was a last resort kind of move, though. It would spark an immediate response from her, whatever kind. He would keep that in his back pocket while he attempted to learn more. Before we proceed, I feel I must confess something. Oh? He heard her coat scuff the carpet. You are here because of me. There is no part of these events I have not engineered. The most difficult part of the exercise, in fact, was finding excuses as to why I left the bear word in Broken Hill for so long. To be honest, I expected you to move faster. It was becoming untenable. But here you are, bringing the word back to me, filled with vengeance, according to plan. Really, she said, I have to tell you from where I'm standing that looks like a really crappy plan. When I came to Broken Hill in the midst of its immolation, I found myself moved. I felt desire. I realized then the danger of the bear word. It would have corrupted me. It would have been my undoing, as unearned power always is, sooner or later, and I have no intention on wasting this life on temporary greatness. What I will do with the word once I've taken it from you is leave a mark on this world that will never be erased. You're not making a lot of sense, Yeats. He shrugged slightly. Perhaps my motives are beyond your comprehension, but I wish you to know that I don't require words to make you perform my will. You are my puppet regardless. You stand here not because you willed it, but because I did. Because defeating the bear word in your hands is the challenge I set myself to prove that I am ready to wield it. Dude, I'm going to kill you, she said. I've walked through every defense you have. There's no doubt about that. He rose from his chair and spread his arms. He began to increase his breathing, although she shouldn't notice that. Segment 77, he was sure of it. It was 220 with more fear and self-doubt. Often paired in families, interestingly. A 220 elder child and a 77 younger sibling. It was possible that Wolf might slide from one to the other. Here I am, he said. Kill me. He heard her approach. There were two wide chairs opposite his desk, reducing the possible space she was occupying into a relatively small cuboid, close enough to slice a word through. Close enough to slice a sword through, if he was quick. You have no idea how much I want this, Yeats. I know it's bad form to say that I want, but I do. I want it so much. He could hear her breathing, very close now. He could sorry. He could probably reach across the desk and touch her. He pulled air into his lungs, preparing to speak the words that would make her his. Hey, she said. What's that word? When the Japanese guys did something bad, they'd atone by gutting themselves. You know, disembowel themselves. What's that called? He didn't answer. Seppuku, she said. I think that's it. Doubt entered his mind. She was a 77. Yes? I've been planning this a while, Yeats. Consider that. He considered. Kino forset hasin Adele. He turned. His hands closed on wood. He drew the blade from his scabbard. Scream! This was to locate her, to provide a signal that he had analyzed her correctly. He lunged across the desk and swept the blade horizontally. It cut nothing but air, and he overbalanced. Not even close, she said, from somewhere near the doorway. He steadied himself, bringing up the blade. How foolish. I'm trying to find where it was. Okay. He was disappointed in himself. It was that garbage about her name, Wolf, now. The purest bullcrap, he'd bought it. She was Emily, of course. She would always be. He moved around the desk towards the sound of her voice, holding the blade flat, prepared for a stroke. He thought he heard something and jabbed speculatively. He turned in a slow half circle. This way, she said from the corridor. He felt his way to the doorway. In the corridor were strange whisperings. The vents? He felt surrounded. She had plans for him, apparently. There are people here. Her voice floated ahead of him, just so you know. He took 2 steps and stumbled over a chair. He felt the toe of his right shoe bend in a way that suggested a permanent crease and felt grief. So I have a proposition for you, Yeats. You can open your eyes, look at this thing I've got around my neck, and follow my instructions to disembowel yourself. This way nobody gets killed but you. Or you can stand there, swinging that oversized butter knife that I send your people against you. What do you say? He ran at her. Someone grabbed his arms. He slashed the blade at his aggressor, and there was a gasp and the hands fell back. He thrust the sword out again and felt it puncture something. Weight pulled at the blade, and he retreated before he could loose it. Something thumped against the carpet. Congratulations, Wolf said. You killed your secretary. He swiveled toward her, voice panting. The corridor was full of people. He could sense them. They were standing silently, waiting for his approach. To reach her, he would need to kill them all. So, no surprise, she said. I don't know what I was expecting. She was still a 220. She had practiced her defense. But he could find a way in. There was always something, a hidden desire or a secret shame. With that, he could unravel her. He explored air with a sword tip. You were never going to be one of us. Eliot thought you could learn to discipline yourself, but the idea was laughable. You could never learn to discipline your excesses. I don't know, Yeats. You may not be giving me enough credit there. He swiveled toward her, voice. Do you really think you can hide your mind from me? He swung the blade. The tip glanced against something, and he scrambled forward, slipping and sliding, got the blade into something, and pushed. Yek, said Emily. That was Frost. Perhaps she was unsettled by violence. Vartix velcor menik visik scream. There was a pause. No screaming. So you figured out I haven't really changed. Congratulations. Not going to help you. I can practically feel your emotions, he said. You radiate them. Tell me something, Emily. Why do you want me dead so much? Isn't it obvious? I think it's because you need to blame me. You need to believe that what you did at Broken Hill was my fault. It was. But a part of you knows the truth, that if you had tried harder, you could have stopped it. Gee, Yeats, you're persistent. I'll give you that. But I didn't come here to listen to this. I was going to make you apologize of your own free will. But you know what? Open your eyes. You could tell yourself you had no choice, but you don't believe it. That is why you desire me dead. You hope to kill a part of yourself. Grab him, she said, to whom he didn't know. Hold him down. Force open his eyes. He raised his sword. Who killed that boy at the academy? Was that me? He was the first to pay for the mistake of loving you with his life, but not the last. Hands plucked at him. He flailed with the sword. Did I make you a killer? Or were you already? Shut up. Vartix velcor menik wisik. You killed your lover. Scream! Hands gripped him. Vartix Velcor Menik Wisik. You deserve to be punished. You deserve to die for what you did. Vartix Velcor Menik Wisik. Scream! You evil bee! A weight of bodies bore him to the ground. Fingers groped at his face. Above this, a thin sound, a keening wall like escaping steam. Vartix Velkar Menik was sick, he said. Emily, lie down and sleep. His eyelids were dragged up. He saw faces he recognized, their expressions intent and focused. He knew their segments, but nothing he could say would dissuade them from holding him down. He could work around that. He could convince them to release him once their duty was done, because between the seething bodies he saw a prone figure, sprawled on the carpet, her white coat gently rising and falling. His heart sank because it was over, and he had won. 4 questions to quickly know someone well. From http wooffy.com/relationships/articles/8W3457WER.html. 1. What do you do in your spare time? 2. What would you do if you had a year to live? 3. What are you most proud of? 4. What do you want? 3. Elliot went to the 8th floor, where burly men in gray uniforms were pulling up the carpet. What the F? Elliot, said Yeats. He had a white cloth and was mopping sweat from the back of his neck. His shirt was wet beneath the armpits. Elliot had never seen Yeats so much as breathing quickly, so this was disconcerting. We had a little disturbance. The delegates have scattered. They thought you were about to bomb the place. Really? Said Yeats. It's children's charity. Elliot backed out of his way of a man carrying carpet. The walls were lightly spattered, fine dark droplets like mist. I'm asking you, he said. What the F? Wolf came back. He said nothing because surely this was a joke. Look, Yeats said, indicating a dark patch on the carpet. That's Frost. I told you she wasn't dead. Yes, you did. I asked for more time. She killed Frost? Essentially, said Yeats. A few others, too. How did she do that? Yeats continued patting his neck with the cloth. There was something odd in his manner, a kind of satisfaction which Elliot didn't understand. Maintenance workers came forward, wanting to get out the carpet on which he was standing. Get out, Elliot said, all of you. The men looked questioningly at Yeats, who didn't respond. The men slunk away, leaving the aroma of cigarettes and carpet glue. Did she have it? Yes, she had the word. Just as you predicted, Yeats said. I should have listened to you. Where is she? Yeats said nothing. Did you kill her? Fascinating, your priorities, said Yeats. I tell you that the bear word has returned to us, and your first question is about her. I have a lot of questions. They're not necessarily ordered. Elliot, as I have grown, you have shrunk. I offered to help you after Broken Hill. I gave you a chance to go away and find the man you are supposed to be, but no, you chose to stay. You wanted to pursue her. You actually said those words. You wanted to make amends for failing to stop her, to beg forgiveness for failing to protect her. I honestly don't know. I doubt that you do. But what is plain is that she broke you. A 16-year-old girl, and you let yourself care for her. It was clear from the beginning, but what was a weakness became nothing less than a psychological disintegration. Look at you. You are an echo of who you were. Well, he said, how refreshing to have an honest opinion. I have faced the word and won. This is what I have done while you were falling into yourself. The day I realized the bear word could corrupt me, I began to prepare myself to face it. That is why I left the word in Broken Hill, for her to recover. You what? I have no intention of triggering another Babel event. I have worked rather too hard for that. It was only by proving myself worthy of the word that I could trust myself to resist its temptations, and I wished to wield it for such a long time. The thing that I find disappointing about empires, Elliot, is they are so transient. On reflection, it seems that real power would be not to merely rule the world, but to mark it. He shrugged. Perhaps that's just me. You've become effing incomprehensible. Wolf could have killed us all. He shrugged. She didn't. She could have. She set it into a necklace. In order to keep it close, I suppose. Yeats reached into his jacket pocket. Elliot shifted his gaze away. I have it wrapped, Elliot. He looked. Whatever it was lay beneath a white cloth. That you think I made a bare word to compromise you is adorable, Yeats said. Elliot, in your present state, I would barely need words. Where is Wolf? Downstairs, confined, sleeping. What are you going to do with her? You know what. Elliot, it's time to let go of Wolf. Let me help you. He said nothing. She is a murderer. She killed 3,000 people, in the process of which, incidentally, she managed to inflict the world on herself. Caught her reflection in Broken Hill. An accident, I believe, but she is now under instruction to, and I quote, kill everyone. How far below the surface that lurks, we can only guess. She has been attempting to resist it by channeling her thoughts toward me. But it is a part of her. It will never go away. She is irredeemable, Elliot. She always was. Accept this, and please do it quickly because I have a job for you in Syria. I am not going to help you rule the world. Yes, you are. You don't know me as well as you think. Elliot, said Yeats, if that were true, you wouldn't need to say it. She woke and felt for the necklace, and it was gone. The world was yellowish. It was 6 feet by 8. It was a padded bench seat, which she guessed doubled as a bed. On carpet she recognized a thick gray door with small window in it, obscured by something on the other side. She was in her underwear. Her head felt bruised. No, not her head, something deeper than that. She sat up. She put a hand to her forehead and closed her eyes a moment because things were very, very bad. Time passed. She stood. She paced. She grew thirsty. She discovered a plastic bucket under the bed seat, which she guessed was for a pee. She spent some time breaking off a long triangular shard and tucked this into the rear waistband of her underpants. When she positioned the bucket right, you couldn't tell. It seemed to Emily that this room wasn't monitored. Maybe it was unnecessary, when you had a person in a 6 by 8 cell with nothing but a bucket. But when she got out of here because the organization wasn't monitoring her, that was when it was really going to be hilarious. These were positive thoughts. She was not actually getting out. She was just keeping busy until Yeats turned up. Someone did come, but not Yeats. At first, Emily didn't recognize him. He had cut his hair. It had been 8 or 9 years, but his eyes were the same, and she hadn't forgotten the way they had bulged in that fast-food restaurant bathroom when he tried to coerce her into a... She threw out some words just in case. Please, said Lee. The door closed. Emily caught a glimpse of people out there who would provide obstacles to any attempted flight. She considered it anyway, but decided to save the bucket knife. It would be a shame to waste that on Lee if she might get a chance at Yeats. Lee went down on his haunches. It was kind of an odd pose, but it brought his eyes level with Emily's as she sat on the bench seat. Her skin puckered. She felt the urge to fold her arms, but didn't because she didn't want to give him anything. We write reports, you know, Lee said. He looked odd, sickly, but that was probably the yellow lights. When we recruit someone, we send along a little write-up saying what we think. Yours was negative, Emily. I won't lie. I was extremely negative. I know what you're thinking. I gave you a bad report because you punched me? No, I put that aside, like the professional I am. I gave you a bad report, Emily, because you were actually going to do it. It was a simple test. I used weak words, starter words, and still, you were going to do it. You're fragile. You have no defense, and people like that don't last in the organization. He spread his hands. Imagine my surprise when the Academy accepted you. It makes sense now. Now I know you cheated your way in. Elliot taking pity on you, now I understand. But at the time I was amazed. And then they made you Wolf. I took it personally. I don't mind admitting it. It felt like an insult. I mean, my report was very clear. Candidate shows no aptitude for mental discipline, nor the inclination to develop it. Those were my words. Well, look at you now, just like I predicted. And you know what? How it's turned out is actually pretty good for me. Now I look like a genius. It took a while, but I finally made it to D.C. He paused, as if for a response, but she didn't give him one, because she hadn't figured out why he was here. He sighed and straightened, plucking at his pant creases. She wasn't thrilled with the new eyeline. So, Lee said, as you might have guessed, you're going to die soon. In fact, as I understand it, the only reason you're still here is Yeats has become too busy with a new project to get around to debriefing you yet. When I say debriefing, I mean compromising you and getting you to dump out the contents of your brain in case there's anything in there that might be useful to us. Now, this is going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop it, but my idea, Emily, was to spare Yeats some trouble. You see, my being here is a very big opportunity for me. A test, you might say, and if I'm able to go back to Yeats with the information he wants, well, that would be good. He removed his jacket and began to roll up his shirt sleeves. Why am I telling you this, since clearly you have no interest in doing what I want? I'll tell you. It's because, Emily, I want you to understand how extremely, intensely motivated I am right now. She said, Lee, the idea that you can compromise me is laughable. Oh, I realize you're not 16 anymore. I'm not expecting it to be that easy again. In fact, I hear you've been working on your defense pretty hard. He began to unbuckle his belt. The thing is, I think deep down, you're just the same. I think you're fragile. You subscribe to the idea that the best defense is a good defense. And it served you well, sure. But here we are. He pulled his belt free and began to wind the strap around one hand. I think once we test that defense, really put some pressure on it, we might see some cracks. I'm pretty confident about that, but once a person is under severe physical stress, a lot of the higher brain function falls away. The critical thinking, the learned behaviors. He taps his forehead. What am I saying? You know all this. You were in school more recently than me. You know what I'm talking about, and you know I'm not leaving this room without getting what I want. The only question is how hard you're going to make it. He let the belt buckle dangle from his fist. So, he said, how are we doing this? Two large men came in, wearing white uniforms that Emily recognized from labs. They approached her with their hands out like claws. By this time, she was in a pretty crazy place, screaming and waving the bucket knife around to spatter with blood from head to toe. Lee was lying on the floor, quietly pumping out his life through his throat. She swiped at one of the orderlies, shrieking semi-random words, but he caught her wrist and wrapped his arms around her. It felt oddly comforting. They twisted her hands and forced the bucket knife from her fingers and held her down for what felt like hours. Some other people took Lee away. That was the last time anyone visited her who wasn't Yeats. She picked Lee's blood off her, flake by flake. It had dried hard, so this way she was able to clean herself one piece at a time. Maybe clean was the wrong word. It was pretty disgusting, but she kept at it because the alternative was worse. Every flake of Lee that she removed made her feel better. Days passed. It felt like days. She became extremely thirsty. After enough of that, she developed a tremble that wouldn't go away. Her bowels and bladder shut down. She could feel them inside her like stones. She was being tortured, she assumed. Her physical needs were being deliberately left unmet. She thought about Elliot, about whether he knew she was here. She figured no, because if he did, he would have shown up. She had just had that feeling. Of course, she had left him face down in a ditch in Broken Hill, and it would have made complete sense if Elliot hated her with a fiery passion, but she had the idea that kind of relationship she had with him allowed for mistakes, even big ones, and that when his door was opened, it wouldn't be Yeats but Elliot, and his eyes would be full of reproach, but there would also be forgiveness and hope. She considered removing her underwear, which were spattered with dark brown leaf spots and made her feel permanently stained. It might even be intimidating to Yeats. Nothing here but Emily, pal. But she didn't do it. She wasn't that. She made herself climb off the bed every now and again, and jump on the spot, or at least bounce up and down, so she wasn't just lying there. The light never went off. She couldn't tell how much time was passing. Her thoughts went around and around. Sometimes she caught herself singing. Elliot swung the car into the school driveway and crawled up to the house. It was late, most of the windows dark, but not Bronte's. He sat in the car a few moments. Then he climbed out and went inside. The corridors were empty. It had been a while since he was last here, and the place felt unfamiliar, although nothing was different. He entered the east wing and passed a boy with a white ribbon tied around his wrist and dark bruises beneath his eyes, reciting something in Latin. The boy saw Elliot and broke off, then looked pained. Elliot did not stop. He knocked on Bronte's door. She called for him to enter in the imperious voice she adopted for students, and he stepped inside. She was behind her desk, surrounded by papers, her hair pinned up by threatening escape. She set down a pen and leaned back in her chair. What fortuitous timing! I was about to start grading papers, she gestured. Will you sit? I'm going to Syria. "Oh," she said. "When?" "Now. Tonight." She nodded. "You should try to visit the museum in Damascus. They have a tablet with the world's oldest record. It's our oldest recorded alphabet, linear alphabet. It's quite humbling." "I want you to come with me." She became very still. "I'm not sure what you mean." He looked around the room. "Do you remember the watch I had, the digital one, to wake me so that I could get back to my room before dawn? I was terrified of it failing, or sleeping through it. Elliot, please." "Atwood knew," he said. "She told me as much many years later." "Please," said Bronte. "We thought we were being clever, carrying on under their noses, and when we had to stop, we thought we did that in secret, too. We did it because we were terrified of being discovered, but they knew." Her eyes glimmered. "Why are you saying these things? Are you here to compromise me?" "No," he said. "God, no." "Then stop talking." "They persuaded us, without saying a word. There was no alternative, Elliot." "How?" "Sorry." "There was no alternative, Elliot. I don't believe that anymore. I can't. I'm sorry. It's the truth. I have this idea that it would have been a girl," he said. "I don't know why. But I've thought about that for a while. I find it hard to shake." Bronte put her face in her hands. "Stop talking." She'd be grown now, a young woman. "Stop!" "I'm sorry," he caught himself. "I'm sorry." "I want you to leave." He nodded. He hesitated, almost apologized again, then moved to the door. Before he closed it, he glanced back, in case she looked up from her hands. But she hadn't. He landed in Damascus. Heat enveloped him the instant he stepped over the threshold of the airplane, a taste of Australia with a different scent. He made his way across the tarmac to the airport proper, and submitted himself to the impatient eyes of various mustachioed officials. His papers were impeccable, and so he was soon released into the main hall, which was large, framed with high latticed keyhole-shaped windows, and even vaguely air-conditioned. A short man in a tight suit stood gripping a sign that read, "I'm Elliot," he said. "You are Hossein?" The man nodded, extending his hand in the Western manner. Said Elliot. It's not English. I don't know how to read that. Um the man's hand dropped, his face relaxed. "My plane is delayed," Elliot said. "It is due in 10 hours. You will wait here for it, and that is what you will believe." He could see the exit. There was no shortage of drivers on the pavement outside, and when Yeats asks you what happened, he said, "Tell him I retired." Someone entered the room. She squeezed her eyes shut as soon as she realized, so was left with only the briefest impression. A square man in a dark suit, silver hair. "Hello, Emily," Yeats said. She sat up. Her brain felt soft. Lee had been right. It was harder to marshal mental defenses while under physiological stress. She needed to think clearly, but all she wanted was a sandwich. "Lee is dead. You assumed, perhaps, but in case you were wondering about the possibility of last-minute medical heroics, no, he died. Another for your collection." "I'll stop at one more." "No," Yeats said, "you won't. I think we both understand this. You are infected with a murderous impulse. You've managed to ameliorate this so far by plotting my demise. If you actually succeeded, well, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? Since you would inevitably begin to kill everyone. I think you must realize this. You must plan to kill me, but you must not do it. Quite the conundrum." She wondered how quickly she could get off the bed and get her hands around Yeats' throat. Probably not very fast, probably to no great effect. Even if she did, she needed to be smarter. This was her chance. She would not get him alone again. She needed her head to stop pounding. Was this a suicide mission? I don't think so. It goes against your character. I think you came here with a plan to kill me in the vaguest hope that you would somehow be redeemed. For you are such an immediate girl. You live from opportunity to opportunity. Does that sound right? Maybe, she thought. She didn't know. She was hungry. She wondered where Elliot was. I'm founding a religion, said Yeats. I use the term religion loosely, but then so does everyone. It's rather a lot of work even with the bare word. And once it's done, that's only the first step, so I won't waste any further time. Here's what's going to happen. You will open your eyes. You will look at the bare word. I will say, forever serve my interests. He loomed closer, a shape she couldn't quite bring into focus. I see from your expression that this is unexpected. You thought you would be killed, a natural assumption, but what I realized, Emily, is that you made yourself useful. You are skilled, resourceful, adaptable, and you have a kill order in your head that will be triggered in the event of my death. You are, in fact, the perfect bodyguard. No, I won't do that. Of course you will. You have no way of stopping it. She bared her teeth, trying to rise from the bed. He was right. She was alone in a cell. She didn't even have a bucket. But there had to be something. There was always something before. As many people as I've enthralled, I don't think I've ever encountered someone who hates me quite as much. Which makes this rather fascinating, Emily, since the brain being what it is, your mind will invent a series of rationalizations to justify why you're choosing to serve me. How far will you bend in order to reach that place? That's what raises my curiosity. I wonder whether the end result will still be able to accurately be called you. I will kill you. Well, he said, you'll want to. Stay back. She thought she heard him reproaching, and threw out her arms. Stay back, you mother effer. I'm not going to grapple with you, Emily. You will open your eyes of your own volition. You will do this because you see there is no alternative. Elliot, she said, I want to see Elliot. I'm afraid Elliot is in Syria. He flew out last night. Tell him I'm here. Oh, Emily, said Yeats. He already knows. She didn't want to believe him, but she couldn't find falsehood in his voice. Elliot, she thought, Elliot, you are my last hope. Open your eyes, please, Yeats said, and she began to shake very badly because she was going to do it. Word. W. A. D. Noun. 1. A single distinct, meaningful unit of language. 2. A basic unit of data in a computer. 3. Something spoken or written, a word of warning. 4. With negative. The smallest amount of something spoken or written, I don't believe a word of it. 5. Conscientious or angry speech. He had words with her. 6. A command, password, or signal. She gave the word to begin. 7. One's account of the truth. Her word against his. 8. A promise or assurance. I give you my word. I'll return. 4. So you left her, Harry said. Elliot rubbed his forehead. His throat was sore. He had been talking for some time. It was taxing because he was recovering from a near-death experience from outside the window. Forces were gathering to kill him. That's what you get from that story, that I left? Harry didn't respond. Yes, I left. There was no alternative. There was always an alternative. Well, he said. He felt tired. It didn't feel like it. What then? Yeats sent her after me. I had this crazy idea that I'd be left alone if I went far enough away, that I could start a new life, but she came after me and systematically murdered everyone who was in the way. She's probably compromised. You think that makes a difference? Yes, said Harry, because I can uncompromise her with the bare word. Can't be done. Why not? You can't erase an instruction. Not even with that. You would only create conflicting instructions. Which means what? It's unpredictable. Well, that's effing something. The original instruction won't go anywhere. It could reassert itself at any moment based on situational factors, such as where she is, how she's feeling. Do you want to take that chance when one of the instructions is kill everyone? Yes. Well, you effing can't. A low thrumming began outside. Harry peered out the window at the sky. I love her. He shook his head. You're misremembering. I remember that. Listen to me carefully, Elliot said, because over the last 12 months, I have been highly motivated to figure out exactly what happened at Broken Hill, and as a result, I know for a fact that your movements diverged from hers shortly after she left me face down in a ditch. What I pieced together from this was that she went to you and asked you to leave with her. You said no. This is how I first began to suspect your existence as an outlier and how I know you didn't love her. You said people are defined by what they want, that it's the most important thing about them, yes? Yes. Then I know who I am. He looked out the window. Well, terrific. That's terrific, Will. I'm so glad you could find your emotional core before your ex-girlfriend murders us. Imagine what would happen if she got her hands on a bear word again. Imagine that. I'll keep it from her. Okay, said Elliot. Well, now we're entering a magical fantasy land because, with all due respect to your newly regained assertiveness, you don't have a hope of keeping her from anything she wants. What's that noise? Choppers. More than one? What do they look like? Why would she do anything to help this guy Yeats? She must be compromised. He's making her chase us, and you say she has to die for it. You think I like it? Yes, I do, because of Charlotte. He looked at the ceiling. Well, he said, maybe you're right. So it doesn't matter. Is it Wolf's choice? Maybe not, but she is what she is. You, right now, are shooting at people for the crime of being compromised. Why is Wolf different? Also, may I add, she wasn't made this way out of nowhere. Yeats sowed that seed in fertile ground. Harry raised his voice over the din of the choppers. Meaning what? Meaning she wiped out Broken Hill. Maybe she was compromised then. You're choosing what you want to believe. I would love to believe that I didn't let 3,000 people die because I couldn't see her for what she was, but I can't. The truth is, she was always like this, and I refuse to see it. I tell you what, how about we kill Yeats? Sure, we ask Wolf to stand aside for a minute. Don't look at me like that's a realistic possibility. She'll defend him to the death, and even if she could be circumvented somehow, Yeats being alive is what keeps Wolf in check. Remove him, and she's left with an instruction to kill everyone. Harry was watching out of the window. The loudness of the choppers seems to have leveled. You want a nightmare scenario? Yeats goes down. Wolf takes the bear word. Yeats cannot die. Not before Wolf. Harry didn't react. What's happening out there? Guys coming out of choppers. What kind of guys? Military. Big black helmets with goggles. Can't see their faces. Ah, said Elliot. So we are completely effed then. Harry looked at him. Environmentally isolated personnel. They see the world through filters to protect them against compromise. Should I shoot them? Sure, he said. Why not? Harry raised the rifle. A part of the window frame near his head exploded. He ducked against the wall. Crap. Yes, Elliot said. Harry moved to the other window, checked outside. They're encircling us. I would imagine they're landing on the roof, too, Elliot said, rappelling down for the choppers, perhaps. What happened to Charlotte? What? When I met you, you had a buddy, a whole bunch of guys, on that ranch, including Charlotte. How did they get there? Who gives a crap? Elliot said. Honestly, Harry, at this point, who cares? You think they're going to take us alive? Harry rubbed his chin, a gesture Elliot had seen before. Under the mattress. What? I got you a pistol from the armory. It's under the mattress. Elliot stared at him. You want to maybe get it out? I want to shoot you with it, if it would make any difference. It's going to be all right, Elliot. No, said Elliot. These guys are going to kill us while Wolf watches from a distance. Sometime later, an unimaginable number of people are going to devote their lives to shifting dirt, because Yeats has developed a hankering to dig a very deep hole in one place and pile it up in another. That's how it's going to be, you stupid a-hole. Those guys on the ranch? They were the ones I could persuade to leave the organization. I thought Charlotte was one of them, but it has since become abundantly clear that she was compromised by Wolf and feeding back information such as your existence. What we were planning, and so on, the entire time, and then she turned to Charlotte against me, and I had to shoot her. I had to effing shoot her, Will, just to get the gun. Why bother? He shouted. Since Wolf is coming only to shower us with chocolates and kisses, Harry paced. Oh, Elliot said. Oh, are we having regrets? Shut up. 20 years, Elliot said. My entire adult life, I've guarded every word that's come out of my mouth. And you know what? I'm done. I'm finally completely effing done. So hey, F you, Will Park, Harry Wilson, whoever you are. F you very much, and F you Yeats. And you, Emily Wolf. F you the most of all. He threw back the blanket. He slid a band beneath the mattress and found metal. Let's go! His body hurt everywhere, but his mind was soaring. Here we go, ayo, diddle diddle. Emily came out of the chopper and jogged to the shelter of a falling down building that had come once solid wire, apparently. She had forgotten about stores like this, shops, she meant, shops that only sold one thing, which you could not conceive of wanting. You could live a lifetime in DC and never see a wire store. If you wanted wire, you would go to a warehouse-style hypermarket, and it would be one shelf in aisle 12, but here it was a whole shop. You went in and asked for some wire because the ruse had knocked down a section of your side paddock fence again, and you would have a conversation about it. She hadn't wanted to come back to Broken Hill. She had been operating for a while now as a compartmentalized person, putting different pieces of herself in different places, and she didn't know what Broken Hill would do to that. But she was here because she didn't get to make choices about that kind of thing anymore and had to do the best she could. One part of her, one part of compartments, was glad. It thought she was coming home. The rest was pretty freaked out. We're deploying, said Plath. Plath was running around with a headset that wouldn't stay put, talking to security guys. Emily was not very happy with Plath. She had crossed paths with Plath a few times, and each time Plath was more neurotic. There was something wild and jumpy in her eyes that Emily did not trust, and so Plath had come on board shortly after the terrible failed attempt to corner Elliot and his outlier at the Portland airport, during which the poet Rain had died. And although Plath hadn't said anything, Emily knew. She viewed that incident as a shameful F-up on Emily's part. It's so hot, Plath began to extract herself from her jacket. Emily was not wearing a jacket because it had been obvious in advance that the desert would be hot, like an oven. Yes, she watched Plath get her jacket and tangled up in her headset. I'll call Yeats, tell him we've landed. No, he has to be kept up to... Don't call Yeats, Emily said. She was still in charge. She was still the best in the organization at hunt and kill. We need a command center, said a man. His voice was machine modulated, coming out of a helmet. His name was Masters. He was in control of the soldiers. Currently, Masters had EIPs spreading through Broken Hill like a toxic spill, establishing perimeters, getting fixes, whatever else it was they did. It was to help her neutralize Elliot, but she didn't like it, being around people she couldn't compromise. She remembered a burger place. It was a good distance from the hospital, close enough to coordinate the action, but also close that Elliot was likely to be able to sneak up and shoot her. She had eaten there alone sometimes, other times not. She wasn't thinking about that. Harry was trying to surface in her brain, but she was not going to let him. That point was, it was a good location. I know somewhere. A small squad swept the burger place while she and Plath stood outside, shielding their faces from the sun. A chopper passed overhead, whipping up hot, stinging sand. Ugh, said Plath, this place. A soldier opened the rear door and gestured. She passed through a small kitchen where a dark skillet lay under a layer of dust. Utensils dangled from overhead racks, surprisingly bright. Then she was in the serving area, passing familiar tables. There were no bodies. Maybe the soldiers had removed them. Plath hung back for some reason, but Emily moved to the front of the store. There were dark shapes outside, hard to see through the dirty plate glass, and she approached with some trepidation. Outdoor tables, a ragged umbrella, still further down the street. She didn't look for detail, but could see the shape of the hospital. Somewhere inside were Elliot and his outlier. Her phone rang. She pulled it out. I hear you're in Broken Hill, said Yeats. Yes, she looked at Plath, the snitch. I find myself wondering why Elliot would go there, of all places. Well, my guess is to get the word, she said. The outlier can just pick it up. There was silence. Hello? I'm sorry, I was rendered speechless a moment just then. The bear word, she said. It's in the emergency room. I have the bear word. You have the copy I made. The original is still here. How useful it would have been to have this information before this moment. Oh, she said. I'm sorry. She had known that in one of her compartments. You will kill Elliot, Yeats said. And the outlier, and for that matter, anyone else Elliot has managed to conjure up who doesn't work directly for me. You will then cordon off the hospital until I arrive. Is this clear? Yes, in her head, she added, you jerk. She did this sometimes. It was a kind of game. I really am vexed by this outlier business. I have felt decidedly uncomfortable knowing that one exists. It is a most unwelcome distraction to my work. I can imagine, you jerk. Call me when Elliot's dead, he said. I won't set foot in Broken Hill until then. Oh, and Emily, at some point, you will fill me on exactly how you managed to copy an object you can't look at. I will do that, she said. The phone clicked. Her jaw worked, and for a moment she thought she was actually going to say it, but she only made a little grunt, "Yeah," and glanced at Platt. But no one seemed to have noticed, so that was okay. In the beginning, she hadn't even been able to think it. Perhaps eventually she would be able to say the words to his face, "Hey, Yeats, you're a jerk." It was a fun idea. Implausible, most likely. This was as far as it could go, a mental game. She would see. For now, the important thing was that a part of her was still her. Elliot strode to the door, pulled it open, and disappeared. This happened so much more quickly than Harry expected because until a few moments ago, Elliot had looked very much like a guy recovering from a near fatal gunshot wound. What had suddenly revived him, Harry did not know. "Wait," he said, but Elliot was running down the corridor. Harry could hear his footsteps. He hefted the rifle. This was going to be especially useless for close quarters combat. He hadn't intended to leave the room. He'd intended to stay and pick off guys until Emily got the message and came to see him. He blew air through his teeth. "F," he said, and went after Elliot. He jogged down the corridor, passing two neonatal rooms that were once staffed by women named Helen, who'd always had plinked iced donuts any time of the day or night. Harry had never seen her eat one, she just had them. He'd visited this place often for those donuts. He reached the corner and poked his head around. Elliot was nowhere to be seen. He just disappeared. Harry debated the merits of opening his mouth to make the kind of noise that might attract armed men, but then there was a quick 1-2 of flat gunshots in the near distance, which had decided him. He reached the stairwell and peered over the railing to see Elliot standing below him. At Elliot's feet was a man in a black suit with no helmet. The man looked dazed. His gun, a semi-automatic, lay a few feet away. "Shoot them in the face," Elliot said. "They're armored, but it's distracting." "What did you do?" The man in the black suit began to grope for his gun. "It's moving." He raised the rifle. "Don't," said Elliot. "He's on the side of the Angels now." The man retrieved his gun and got to his feet. He looked up at Harry questioningly. "He's cool," Elliot told the man. "Neither of you shoot the other." He began to descend the steps. "How did you—" But Elliot had disappeared. Harry ran after him, jumping the steps 3 or 4 at a time. He caught Elliot at the top of the second floor, which was the surgical wing. "Will you effing wait?" He went to seize Elliot by the shoulder, but the black-suited man slapped his gun into his shoulder and looked down the barrel at him. "Don't alarm my plural," Elliot said. "He wants to protect me." "What do you think you're doing?" "Looking for Wolf. She could be anywhere." "Yes, but it's a better option than sitting in that room." Elliot looked around. His pupils were dilated. "You used to work here. What's a clever way out?" "I don't know. Can you tell this guy to stop pointing his gun at me?" "He's finding you threatening. So am I, actually. You look like you're on drugs." "I'm releasing a lot of dopamine," Elliot said. "It's a natural high." "Joel! Gun down!" The soldier lowered his gun. He looked at Harry with baleful eyes. "How about a laundry chute?" "What? A chute," Elliot said. "That we slide down to a basement or some such." "No, they don't work like that. This is a hospital. We'd lose children down there." "What then?" "I don't know." "Think," Elliot said. "You must have lost a few patients. People who snuck out somehow. It's not Fort Knox." "No one—" "Okay, one time a guy broke into a storage room by climbing onto the roof of the building next door. We might be able to—" "Yes, that—" Elliot looked at the soldier. "Go cause a distraction. Shoot at nothing. Report false information, things like that." The man nodded and began to jog down the stairs. "This storage room, then. How did you compromise that guy?" "I know him. I used to work for the organization, you know. Storage room." He led Elliot through the double doors. He had never liked coming here. It was the surgeons. He'd never been completely sure if they really gave a crap. They seemed to enjoy challenges more than other people. "So you what, shot him in the face, pulled off his helmet, and used words?" "Correct," Elliot said. He reached the storage room and tried the handle. No one had been by in the last year or so to unlock it, apparently, but he knew there the key was kept. He jogged down the corridor, pulled open the second drawer in the nurse's station, and found it among paper clips and rubber bands. When he returned, Elliot was tugging at the door. "Quick," Elliot said. "I am being quick. Quicker." He pulled open the door. He was finding the new Elliot unsettling. Somewhere in the distance was a staccato of gunfire. They waited, but it wasn't repeated. "Joel," said Elliot fondly. They entered the storeroom. The window had been fitted with new locks since the intruder, but they wouldn't be much of an impediment from this side. He peered through the glass. A short climb down to a secluded part of the roof, then a short run and leap to the roof of the pharmacy next door. He did not see any soldiers. "The real problem is finding Wolf," Elliot murmured in his ear. Harry flinched. He hadn't heard him approach. Elliot looked at him. "Where is she, do you think? Can you take a step back? I think you know." He tapped Harry's forehead. Don't effing touch my head. He began to wrestle the window out of his frame. This place, Elliot said, it brought you back to yourself. Maybe it's having a similar effect on her. And you know her, so tell me, where is she? That plan you had before about getting out of Broken Hill, I'm coming around on that. Where? Elliot said. He tossed the frame to the floor and climbed up on the shelves. The window was narrow, but he managed to work the rifle through it and drop to the rooftop 6 feet below. He crouched against the wall until Elliot dropped beside him. Elliot looked around. This was a good idea. He rose and ran to the edge of the roof, leaped across the gap, and landed on the tin roof of the pharmacy. Harry saw his head turn left, right. Then he stopped moving. Harry froze. Elliot crept back toward the edge, peered over, and dropped out of sight. Harry ran after him. Halfway there, he heard Elliot bark out words in a strange guttural tongue. When he reached the edge, he saw Elliot in the alley, standing over another helmet-free soldier. This one was bald. He tossed the rifle down and lowered himself over the edge. I'm starting to feel like you don't even need me. Oh, I do, said Elliot. I don't know where she is. He looked at the pharmacy. She's not in there. I don't remember her ever going in there. Elliot, what? You're staring at nothing. Oh, said Elliot. I was thinking about earplugs. Is that... That sounds like a great idea. It's great against verbal compromise. It's not so great for hearing someone coming up right behind you with a gun, so there's a trade-off. Right. I'd rather be shot than compromised, though. He looked at Harry. Shoot me if she managed to compromise me. Did I already say that? No. Well, do. I'm serious. The bald man said, We're on the third floor. We know you're not there. Thank you, Max, said Elliot. Harry, where is she? How the F should I know? Think. He looked around. If he were Emily, where would he go? Somewhere near the hospital. There was a cafe on the other side of the block, but Emily had never liked it. She said it smelled like men. She'd usually gone to the burger joint farther down. That was actually where they'd first met, outside of her being a patient, that was. She'd been eating, and Harry had walked by with some girl, whomever he was seeing at the time, and she'd called out. He remembered thinking she was a nuisance, or she was a nutcase. Why had he thought that? The card. She'd sent him a card with something crazy written on it, to my hero, or you saved my life, something like that. But then they'd spoken, and she hadn't seemed crazy. There had been something about her, something bright, to which he'd responded. You think of something, Elliot said. I see it on your face. He shook his head. Don't hold out on me. Elliot leaned closer. Come on now, Harry. You're creepy as hell right now. This state is temporary. I need to make the most of it. Calm down is going to be a B. I'll make you a deal. Oh, yes. I might know where she is, but if I tell you, I go in first. I get to talk to her. If it goes badly, fine. You do what you have to do, but I get 5 minutes. Deal. Elliot stuck out his hand. He hesitated, suspicious. You don't mean that. What do you want me to say? Elliot shouted. You're confronting the futility of your own proposition. Shoot that guy. This part was directed to the bald soldier, who dropped to one knee and raised the semi-automatic. Harry turned in time to see a pair of dark-suited figures at the end of the alley. Elliot grabbed his arm, and then they were running. It's the burger place, Harry panted. Right, circle around the block. They rounded the corner. 5 minutes, promise me. Okay, Elliot said. Fine. He stopped, eyes widening at something on Harry's gun. Whoa, crap, F, what? He said. He couldn't see the problem and looked at Elliot, and Elliot's pistol butt was moving very quickly toward his face. That was all he knew. The soldiers went in, and there was a problem. Emily could tell because at first Masters emitted updates at intervals of 15 seconds. Who was where, doing what, and for how long. They were expected to do it, a non-stop cataloging of physical facts that he seemed to enjoy on a deep sexual level, then for no reason a whole minute by with no updates at all. This manifested in Blythe as a series of increasingly dramatic hair corrections, and finally a question, and Master turned his goggles toward her and said in his machine voice, We're trying to fix target location. I thought you had target location, Plath said. Masters did not hear her. Did we not start with target location? Elliot is slippery, Emily said. We are not having another Portland. Plath directed this at Masters, but what Masters thought of it was unknowable. Emily kind of hoped Masters would become so peed off with Plath that he would unsnag one of what had to be 5 or 6 different weapons strapped to various parts of his body and do something unspeakable with it. Yeets, she thought. As you did at times like this, you jerk. She rose from the table. The front glass was very dirty, but she could see through it. A chopper was hovering above the hospital, but aside from this, nothing seemed to be happening. We're regrouping, said Masters. We may have a new fix. You get a fix, said Plath. You get a effing fix right this second, or you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Her face was flushed. Globules of sweat formed a neat line along her hairline. She was displaying an awful lot of emotion for a poet, which made Emily think that Plath had reason to believe the consequences for failure were particularly terrible. She kept watching the road. She needed to think like Elliot. She knew him better than most. She could imagine Elliot skulking around there, sniffing around. That's what he'd be thinking about. No escape. He would be coming for her. A black-suited soldier emerged from the crossroad and jogged toward the burger place. Who is this guy? She said. Nobody answered, so she tried again. Who the F is this effing guy? Plath came up beside her. Speaking for myself, I don't mind adding a little manpower to this location, Masters said. We're withdrawing our zones. This sounded like bullcrap to Emily because if her current location had become part of Masters' operational zone, that would have been something he would have mentioned. Soldiers moving locations, that was all he talked about. She eyed the approaching guy. Oh, she said. That's Elliot. That's impossible, said Plath, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Plath was beginning to realize what Emily had known for a while, that you could not underestimate Elliot. Every time you thought you had him figured out, you didn't. Let's get some security here, huh? Plath reached across Emily to Masters, who might have been barking orders over the internal radio or may have been just standing there. It was impossible to tell. Masters. Unit is not responding. Masters drew a fat pistol. May be hostile. I advise retreat. Plath vanished. Emily hesitated. She really did want to face Elliot and end him, but this was not the way to do it. With Elliot in heavy body armor, filtered against compromise, there was taking risk, there was suicide. She turned to follow Plath, then had another thought. There was always a possibility that this was another layer of sneakiness. Elliot could have deliberately sent someone who would be spotted, the outlier perhaps, or just a soldier he'd managed to overcome toward a burger place from the front in order to flush her out the back. That was just the kind of thing that Elliot might do, she considered. There was a side door leading to the dumpster. She decided to be prudent. She pushed her way outside. The brick wall of the adjoining store faced her. This was the kind of thing Emily liked, a closeted escape route. This right here was her element. Then she stopped because it occurred to her that maybe this was the problem. Maybe the last thing she wanted to do in this situation was follow her instincts, since those might be predictable to someone who knew her very well. Elliot stepped around the corner. Crap, she said. Little yellow plugs poked out of Elliot's ears. He was holding a pistol. His eyes were wide, and there was a sheen of sweat on his face that told her that he had put himself into a heightened mental state. Poets could do this if they really wanted. She had seen them do it. They talked and moved very rapidly for about an hour, then slept for days. Gotcha, said Elliot. She held up her hands. She wanted to speak, but it seemed like if she opened her mouth, he would shoot her. He would shoot her anyway, of course. That was why he was here. They faced each other a moment. Maybe some guys would come through the door and take care of Elliot. That would be super handy. Elliot wiggled the plugs out of his ears with his free hand. I had to render the outlier unconscious. He couldn't be trusted. Okay, she said. I blame myself for what happened. I should have stopped it. She didn't know what to say to that. I have to kill you. She nodded. It had been like this for a while. His fingers flexed on the pistol. I'm sorry I didn't teach you better. His expression was very strange. Elliot, she said, you have to stop. Elliot. There were soldiers approaching. She could feel them. This idea was distressing in a way it hadn't been a few moments ago. I made mistakes, he said. Around her, soldiers boiled out of the air like ants. There was a great deal of noise, and Elliot could have shot her, but he didn't. And he fell down and died. After this, she felt strange. People came and went, soldiers and poets, and sometimes they stopped to speak to her, but she didn't hear them. When they began to package Elliot, she walked to the front of the burger place and sat at a table. Occasionally someone walked by, but for the most part she was alone. She began to cry. She didn't understand why, because she had wanted Elliot dead. She had wanted that very clearly, but there was grief coming out of her anyway, spilling from her compartments. And she was reminded that not all of her wants were hers. A shadow fell beside her. She looked up to see who was stupid enough to disturb her in this moment, and she saw Yeats. He righted a fallen chair and composed himself into it. He was wearing a beautiful dark gray suit, and his hair looked fresh and bright. He was wearing sunglasses, but he removed those and set them on the table, and behind them his eyes were flat. "Oh," she said. She felt stupid. Of course Yeats was here. She should have realized that. "Congratulations." He surveyed the line of dust-blown buildings across the road. "You see now why I wanted you, specifically on Elliot." She didn't reply. "Persuasion stems from understanding. We compel others by learning who they are, and turning it against them. All this, the chasing and guns," he gestured vaguely. "These are details. What Elliot could not escape was the fact that I understood him better than he understood himself." Plath hovered at the edge of Emily's senses. Yeats said, "A glass of water, please. Let's make it two." Once Plath had gone, Yeats shrugged his jacket and passed it to Masters, who was standing like he was planted there. "I have been visiting delegates. Not all of them agree with my new direction for the organization. Some tried to move against me. Expected, of course. Futile, since I understand them. We attempt to conceal ourselves, Emily, but the truth is we do not entirely want to be concealed. We want to be found. Every poet sooner or later discovers this, that within perfect walls there is nothing worth protecting. There is, in fact, nothing. And so we exchange privacy for intimacy. We gamble with it, hoping that by exposing ourselves someone will find a way in. This is why the human animal will always be vulnerable, because it wants to be." Plath arrived with two glasses, a kind Emily recognized from years before, and set them on the table. "I feel bad about Elliot." "Yes, well," said Yeats. "Some kind of suppressed emotional overflow, I would imagine. And I'm remembering things." "Oh, such as?" "I came out of the ER through that door," she pointed. "I went that way. People were killing each other because of the word. Harry came after me. He knew what I'd done, but he saved me anyway." "I'm not sure why you're telling me this," said Yeats. "It's irrelevant. I'm not talking to you." A figure was walking toward them, coming from the direction of the hospital. In the heat haze, it could have been anyone, but she had a feeling. "Harry," she said. Harry peered over the edge of the roof at the street below. His head throbbed. Elliot had hit him. He had frowned at something on Harry's rifle, and Harry had looked to see what, and had woken up slumped in the doorway. Now Elliot was gone, and Harry was on the roof of a furniture store, trying to see what was going on. A few minutes ago, a soldier had walked toward the burger place, then another emerged from the front door and approached with his pistol drawn. It seemed like they were going to have a confrontation, but they stopped at 3 feet separation and stood there as if communicating telepathically. Then they both ran back to the burger place, and plenty more soldiers appeared, and there was gunfire. Eventually, a young woman emerged and sat down at the table. He stared because the woman was Emily. He had begun to doubt that a little because of Elliot, whether she was still the same, but now everything was clear. He wriggled back from the rooftop. It was always this way. The more people talked, the more they obscured. You didn't need to argue for the truth. You could see it. He had almost forgotten that. He grabbed the rifle and went to get Emily. Yeats turned to look at the figure approaching them out of the heat haze. "Who?" "The outlier, could be," said Plath, peering out from the raised hand. The figure's arms were extended from his sides. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. "Will Park looks unarmed." "Well, how about we shoot him?" "On it," said Masters. He gestured, and two soldiers stepped onto the road. "We know Park," said Plath. "He's indecisive, untrained with weapons. He's a carpenter." "Emily, you appear anxious," said Yeats. "Is there something I should know?" "Yes, tell me." "I thought Harry died, but he didn't. I just made myself believe that." Plath said, "Who's Harry?" "Her lover," said Yeats, "of some time ago." "He's the outlier?" She nodded. Yeats drummed his fingers on the table. "This changes nothing." They watched the soldiers fan out. Harry began to slow. She could see his face. "Wait," said Yeats. "I'm missing something, aren't I?" She had to answer. "Yes. What am I missing?" He clicked his fingers at someone behind her. "You too." A poet, Rosenberg, a young guy with longish hair, stepped onto the road, heading after the soldiers. "Emily?" "Two things." "Name them. I am instructing you to name them." "I don't think you've been in love. Not recently, anyway. I'm not sure you remember what it's like. It compromises you. It takes over your body. Like a bear word." "I think love is a bear word." "That's the first thing." Yeats didn't react. If anything, he seemed baffled. "The second thing is, I wouldn't characterize Harry as indecisive and untrained with weapons." Plath said, "Perhaps we should move inside." "Yes," Yeats said, "quite." He smoothed his pants and began to rise from the table. Then he stopped because Emily had seized him by the tie. Also, she said, you are a jerk. He walked toward the burger place until soldiers moved onto the road to intercept him. Then he changed course for the real estate office. He clambered through a space that held once a plate glass window, collected the rifle from where he left it on the counter, and jogged toward the back offices. He'd been here a few times when dating Melissa, the real estate agent, enough to know the layout anyway. He took position in Melissa's office and waited. A few minutes later, a soldier shuffled in. Harry waited until the second appeared, then put a bullet into his faceplate. Both men vanished like smoke. He pulled the bolt, reloading as he jogged out into the corridor. He went right instead of left, opened the rear door, and then was in sunshine. He trotted around the side of the building to the air-con vents and peered through. The second soldier was moving away from him in a crouch. He raised the rifle and shot him in the back of the head. When he re-entered the building, he was surprised to find both guys still alive. He wouldn't have credited a helmet with being able to stop a high-powered .28, but he guessed that momentum had to go somewhere. One of the soldiers had pulled off his helmet and was vomiting down his chest. The other was crawling weakly toward the front door. He raised a rifle. The helmetless soldier raised a hand. Harry shot him. He walked around to the other one, reloading the rifle. A man unexpectedly appeared outside the window, a young guy in a cheap suit and tie, stringing together nonsense words, and Harry shot him through the window. He looked back. The crawling soldier had stopped crawling. He reloaded the rifle. He could hear a chopper approaching. Soldiers would be coming from both sides, he guessed. They would be jogging slowly, like these two guys, since they were encased in 40-pound armored ovens. They had been lumbering around in the noonday sun for about an hour. He couldn't really imagine what that was like. He had seen people drop dead out there, trying to do too much. They had the idea that the worst the sun could do was make them uncomfortable. They applied their sunscreen and their hats and headed out and just fell over. He went into the bathroom and slid open the window. There was a low fence offering cover to the adjoining building, and from there he thought he could make his way unseen to pretty much anywhere he wanted. He climbed out the window and began to crawl. Yeat's eyes widened across the table. She had never seen him look shocked before. She had never really seen him look anything. "Release me," he said. "You release me," she said, although that was just to fill time. There was only one way she could ever be free of Yeats, and she was going to have to make that happen herself. He pulled back, reaching inside his jacket for the thing that would take away her mind again, which showed Emily that Yeats really did not get it. He thought the word had worn off somehow, that she no longer felt compelled to obey him. She went after him and found herself gripped from behind by Plath. Of all people! Plath was thin and wiry, not the kind of person who could hold Emily for long, but she hadn't expected to be held at all, and it gave Yeats time to get out the word. "Sit down and stop moving," he said. "No." Disbelief spread across his face. Plath's arms were already slackening, anticipating Emily's compliance. But Yeats' hand was coming out of his jacket, and she didn't want to face what was in there. So she threw her head backward. There was a satisfying connection. She stepped forward, swiped a glass from the table, and tossed the water over Yeats' shoes. Yeats made a frightened, high-pitched sound. This was very beautiful in Emily's ears, but the point was Yeats was not making other sounds that commanded people to kill her, so in the moment he was occupied with the horror of his softening leather. She broke the glass against the edge of the table and sliced it across his throat. He tried to speak. Little red bubbles popped along his lips. She took the bear word from his fingers as gently as could be. He dropped to his knees, and she could have been turning to face Plath and Masters or whoever else was back there, but instead she just stood and watched him die. Harry jogged toward the burger place. He thought there must be soldiers about, but couldn't see them. The choppers had retreated. He didn't know why. He circled around the block, but saw no one, so he came at it from the front. Emily was there. A few bodies lay on the ground. There was a black-suited soldier, but his helmet was off, and he was standing with his feet loosely apart, not holding a weapon, looking around the town like he was vacationing here. He kept the rifle ready and began to cross the street. Emily turned to him. She had something in her hand. Her expression was strange. "Hey," he said. "Em, it's me." He came toward her, and for a moment she didn't know who it was. She had just killed a bunch of people and compromised Masters, and her head was full of bees. But she recognized his expression. It was like the last time she had been surrounded by death and he'd come for her. He was going to save her again, she saw. Of course he was. He was going to forgive her everything, again. "Oh, Harry," she said, "it's so good to see you." He smiled. She thought she would never see that again, his smile. And it killed her because she knew it couldn't last. None of this could last. "I love you," she said, "but I'm sorry. I need you to do something." "Sure." He slung the rifle and came toward her, his hands reaching for hers. "Name it." Kick Cax if Kiksu Zku, she said. "Shoot me." Broken Hill to remain sealed. The Sydney Morning Herald, volume 183, issue 217, page 14. A government body charged with reviewing the toxicity of Broken Hill, site of 2011 disaster that killed more than 3,000 people, has recommended that the town remain fenced off for an indeterminate time. The review was triggered by photographs last summer of what appear to be two large helicopters hovering over the town. This fueled long-running local speculation that the town was not uninhabitable, with conspiracy theories proclaiming the town as home to everything from a secret mafia treasure trove to government military programs. The review, which published a 300-page report today, should hose down such talk, with scientists finding critically high levels of methyl isocarbonate still present in the soil. "As much as I enjoy a good story, it would be highly dangerous to start thinking it's okay to have a look at Broken Hill," said spokesperson Henry Lawson. "Town is, unfortunately, a grim reminder of what can happen when people and businesses operate without proper oversight. Broken Hill remains the site of one of the world's most environmental disasters." Memo. Subject: Revisions to models post-BH. Update as per request. Report not finalized. Don't quote me on this, etc., etc. Our chief finding is that what we saw in BH was a multilingual effect, which I realize makes no sense on the face of it, since no relevant parties are/were multilingual to any known degree. But whenever we've seen rejections of this magnitude before, it's been because the recipient is fluent in more than one language, can be reliably reproduced in testing, e.g., while counting in Dutch. Bilingual subject exhibits increased resistance to compromise in English. We've theorized that when the brain is keyed into one language, words from another are more likely to be the first stage filtered as nonsense syllables, not actually processed as words, i.e., carriers of meaning. So the question is, what second language? And again, don't quote me, data has to be crunched. Our answer is the language of the bear word, whatever that is. We haven't dealt with a bear word before, so our knowledge here is sketchy. But we believe a bear word belongs to a fundamental language of the human mind, the tongue in which the human animal speaks to itself at the basis level, the machine language in essence. We're still not clear on exactly what relationship existed between V. Wolf and the outlier Harry Wilson, some kind of love affair? But we accept that upon discovering he was alive, she shifted into a primitive, animalistic state. Mentally, she was operating in that underlying language, feeling desire as a bear word. As we know, when a subject experiences conflict from instructions of roughly equal compulsive power, results are situationally dependent, i.e., unpredictable. That scenario, we're basically talking about free will. Note that when instructions conflict, they do not cancel out. Subject experiences desire to do both, just worth bearing in mind. Bottom line, we see no reason to discard established models. No need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This may sound like we're trying to cover our butts, i.e., avoid admitting flaws in past research, but it's our honest opinion. I realize this may create something of a political issue given the current organization restructure/bloodbath. Sorry about that, although the bigger issue for me are questions raised by this underlying lexicon. What are its words? How many are there? Can they be revealed through lab research, i.e., direct excavation from the brain? Can we learn to speak them? What does it sound like when who we are is expressed in its most fundamental form? Something to think about. R. Lowell. 5. He rose at 4 and pulled on his pants and boots and jacket. The house was cold as glass, and he tried to coax life out of the remnants of fireplace, but there was nothing there. He tucked his hands into his armpits and went outside. The air was frigid, the sky an open box with no real hint of sunlight outside. Yet, and he traipsed through the near paddock to the barn. The cow Hong heard his approach and mooed hopefully. He led her inside, positioned the bucket, and took his place on the stool. He massaged milk from her teats, resting his forehead against her side for the warmth. He fell asleep like this sometimes, slipping into dreams of death and words. Then Hong would take a step or two away, jerking him awake. Filling the bucket took 8 minutes. It had seemed ridiculously slow at first. He craved greater efficiency, but it was a good lesson in reconnecting. He now enjoyed it as a chance to exist in the moment. There was no past or future when you milked a cow, you were just milking. He carried the bucket back to the house and transferred its contents to 6 bottles. The cat curled around his boots, purring like a tractor, and he gave her a little too. He built a little teepee of sticks and a newspaper and lit by the fire. By then the first rays were creeping along the tree line, and he paused to watch. The best thing about this house was the view. He could walk around it and see 40 miles in every direction. If a car was approaching, he would know 30 minutes before it arrived. The sky was wide and empty. It was a good house. He heard bare feet on floorboards, and Emily emerged, her eyes full of sleep, her cotton nightdress running down from her shoulders. You should be sleeping, he said. You can't tell me what to do. No, he said, you have that backward. She came to him. They kissed. The fire crackled. She tucked herself against him. Want to watch the sun come up? Sure, she said. He grabbed 2 blankets from the pile and threw one over the bench seat he'd built on the veranda. He put an arm around her and threw the other blanket over them. She rested her head on his shoulder. The sun freed itself from the tree line, and he felt its warmth on his face. I love you, she said. She nestled closer, her hand moving up the back of his neck. The wind lifted. Don't kill me, he said. I'm not going to, she said. Join our mailing list. We hope you have enjoyed this product. For the inside scoop on hot upcoming titles plus a chance to win prizes, simply fill in the following. 1. Name. 2. Address. 3. Email. 4. Are you a cat person or a dog person? 5. What is your favorite color? 6. Please select a random number. Circle 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 7. Do you love your family? 8. Why did you do it? That's the last of the book. That's actually the end of the book. Okay, thank you for listening to Lexicon. I think the next book that I'm going to be reading I'll have to look at the poll results to determine that again. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed Lexicon. Good night.